Welcome to No Harry. Today we bring you an unforgettable story. What if Percy Jackson appeared at Hogwarts in year 4 and he and Harry united Greek magic and wizardry to stop both wars? Loving our content? Smash that like button and join our family by subscribing. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1, Stranger Tides. The surface of the Black Lake churned unnaturally. Students gathered at the shore, their anticipation for the Beauxbatons and Durmstrang arrivals momentarily forgotten as the water began to swirl like a massive whirlpool. Harry Potter, standing between Ron and Hermione, squinted against the autumn wind that whipped across the grounds. "That can't be Durmstrang, can it?" Ron asked, craning his neck. "Dad said they'd come by ship, but..." A deafening crack split the air as a column of water erupted 50 feet high. Students screamed and scattered backward, but Dumbledore raised his hand for calm, his blue eyes narrowed behind half-moon spectacles. When the water receded, a solitary figure lay sprawled on the muddy shore. A boy, maybe 16, with dark hair and tattered clothes, gasping for breath like a fish out of water. "Is this some kind of joke?" Draco Malfoy's drawling voice carried across the crowd. "Dumbledore, is this pathetic display supposed to impress us?" Professor McGonagall shot Malfoy a withering look before hurrying toward the prone figure, wand drawn cautiously. "Stand back, all of you." Harry felt Hermione's fingers dig into his arm. "Harry, look at his necklace." Around the boy's neck hung a leather cord with 5 clay beads. Nothing remarkable, but something in Hermione's voice made Harry pay attention. The boy suddenly sat bolt upright, eyes wild, hand instinctively reaching for his pocket. "Annabeth," he shouted, looking disoriented. When he spotted the crowd of black-robed students, he scrambled to his feet, pulling a pen from his pocket. "Young man," McGonagall said sharply, "identify yourself immediately." The boy uncapped his pen, and impossibly, it expanded into a gleaming bronze sword that glowed with a faint aura. The crowd gasped, drawing back further. "Where am I?" the boy demanded, his American accent jarring against the Scottish backdrop. "What have you done with my friends?" Dumbledore stepped forward, his wand still lowered. "I am Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. You've appeared rather dramatically on our grounds, and we'd be most interested to know how." "Hogwarts?" The boy looked bewildered. "Like, magic wands and broomsticks?" A ripple of confused murmurs spread through the students. "I assure you, we mean you no harm," Dumbledore continued calmly. "Perhaps you might tell us your name, and we can sort this out over a cup of tea rather than at sword point." The boy hesitated, eyes darting between the teachers with their drawn wands and the hundreds of students watching. Finally, he lowered his sword slightly. "Percy," he said. "Percy Jackson." Harry felt a strange jolt at the name, like a static shock. Beside him, Ron whispered, "Never heard of any Jacksons in the wizarding world." "He's not a wizard," Hermione whispered back with absolute certainty. "Look at how he's holding that sword. And his eyes." Harry looked closer and saw what Hermione meant. The boy's sea-green eyes held a power that seemed ancient, dangerous in a way that differed from any wizard Harry had encountered. "Very good, Mr. Jackson," Dumbledore said pleasantly, as though sword-wielding teenagers washed up on the lake shore every day. "I suspect we have much to discuss, but first..." Perfect timing. The sky darkened as an enormous powder-blue carriage pulled by giant winged horses appeared overhead, followed shortly by a skeletal ship rising from the depths of the lake. The proper arrivals of Beauxbatons and Durmstrang had begun, momentarily drawing attention away from Percy. Taking advantage of the distraction, Dumbledore gestured to Professor Snape. "Severus, perhaps you could escort our unexpected guest to my office? I'll join you shortly after welcoming our expected visitors." Snape's lip curled with distaste, but he nodded curtly and approached Percy. "The sword," he said coldly, extending his hand. Percy's grip tightened. "Not happening." Harry watched as Snape's eyes narrowed dangerously. You stand on the grounds of a school full of children, armed with a weapon, refusing to surrender it. His wand twitched in his hand. This stays with me, Percy said, jaw set stubbornly. It's not just a weapon, it's part of who I am. Harry was surprised when McGonagall interceded. Severus, perhaps under the circumstances. She turned to Percy. Mr. Jackson, would you give your word not to use that blade against any student or staff member while we determine what has brought you here? Percy studied her face, then nodded. I swear on the river Styx. Thunder rumbled overhead, despite the clear sky, causing even the professors to look up in confusion. Very well, McGonagall said, though she looked unsettled. Severus will take you to the headmaster's office. As Percy was led away, he caught Harry's eye briefly. Something passed between them, a flicker of recognition, though they'd never met. Then he was gone, following Snape's billowing robes toward the castle. What in bloody hell was that about? Ron asked. Language, Ron, Hermione admonished automatically, but her heart wasn't in it. Did either of you notice anything strange about his sword? Harry thought back. It glowed. And it came from a pen. Not just that, Hermione said. When the professors pointed their wands at him, the sword seemed to absorb the magic somehow. Like it was drinking it in. Before they could discuss it further, Madame Maxime emerged from the Beauxbatons carriage, and soon after, Igor Karkaroff led his Durmstrang students up from the ship, including the unmistakable figure of Viktor Krum. The great hall beckoned with the promise of the welcoming feast, but Harry couldn't shake the feeling that Percy Jackson's arrival meant something significant, for him personally. Percy had been in some weird places before, but this castle took the blue chocolate chip cookie. Ghosts, actual transparent ghosts, floated through walls. Paintings moved and talked. Staircases shifted while you were on them. And everyone carried little wooden sticks that could apparently do basically anything. The hook-nosed professor, Snape, hadn't said a word to him since leading him into this circular office filled with silver instruments and portraits of elderly men and women who whispered to each other when they thought Percy wasn't looking. So, you guys are witches and wizards? Percy tried. Like, Hecate's children? Snape's eyebrow arched slightly. I am unfamiliar with that particular lineage. Not children, exactly, came Dumbledore's voice as he swept into the office. Though Lady Hecate's blessing does factor into our magical heritage, according to certain obscure texts. Percy's hand tightened around Riptide. You know about the gods. I know of many things, Mr. Jackson, though I wouldn't claim to know them well. Dumbledore settled behind his desk. What interests me is how a young demigod, I presume that's what you are, found his way onto the grounds of Hogwarts, particularly through our lake, which is protected by numerous enchantments. Percy stared. You know what I am. I have encountered your kind before, though rarely. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. The magical communities tend to remain separate, by ancient accord. Which makes your arrival all the more intriguing. I was at Camp Half-Blood, Percy said, deciding honesty was his best option. Fighting a practice battle with Annabeth, my girlfriend, when this tear appeared in the air. Like reality just ripped open. Next thing I knew, I was underwater in your lake. A spontaneous portal, Dumbledore mused. Highly unusual. Snape made a disbelieving noise. Headmaster, surely you don't believe this, Tail. I believe Mr. Jackson believes it, Severus, which is a start. Dumbledore turned back to Percy. You mentioned Camp Half-Blood, a training ground for demigods, I believe. And which god might you call parent, if I may ask? Percy hesitated, but the old man's eyes held no malice. Poseidon. God of the sea. Ah, Dumbledore nodded, as though this explained everything. That would account for your survival in the lake. Our merpeople reported a disturbance, said the water itself protected an intruder. Look, Percy said, I need to get back. We're in the middle of preparing for a war. Kronos is rising, and, Dumbledore's expression sharpened. Kronos? The Titan Lord? Percy nodded grimly. He's gathering forces, using monsters and demigods who've turned against Olympus. If I don't get back, Headmaster, Snape interrupted, regardless of his origins, we have the Triwizard Tournament to consider. The timing of this intrusion cannot be coincidental. Indeed, Severus. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. Mr. Jackson, I'm afraid returning you home may not be simple. Portals between magical realms are rare and dangerous. Creating one intentionally would require considerable research. Percy stood, frustration building. I don't have time for research. My friends could be dying right now. Time, Dumbledore said thoughtfully, flows differently between realms sometimes. A blessing, perhaps, in this situation. He stood. I propose this, remain at Hogwarts while we investigate your arrival. You'll be our guest, not prisoner, but not quite student either. In return, we'll dedicate resources to finding you a way home. And if I say no? Then you're free to leave, though I'm not certain how far you'd get in a world of magic you don't understand, looking for a portal you can't create. Percy's shoulders slumped. He'd been in enough impossible situations to recognize when he was trapped. Fine. But I want to help with the research. And I need to train. If I'm stuck here, I'm not getting soft. Admirable, Dumbledore smiled. Now, we have a feast waiting, and I must announce the Triwizard Tournament. Would you care to join us, Mr. Jackson? As my personal guest? The great hall fell silent as Dumbledore entered with Percy beside him. Students from all three schools craned their necks to get a better look at the strange boy who'd emerged from the lake. That's him, the one with the sword, whispered a Hufflepuff third year loudly. Dumbledore guided Percy to the staff table, conjuring an extra chair beside his own with a flick of his wand. The casual display of magic made Percy flinch slightly. Is he a fourth champion? Can't be, he's American. Did you see how the lake practically spat him out? The whispers followed Percy across the hall. At the Gryffindor table, Harry watched him carefully, noting how the stranger's eyes scanned the enchanted ceiling with a mixture of awe and wariness. Why is Dumbledore treating him like an honored guest? Ron asked through a mouthful of chicken. He appeared out of nowhere with a sword. He doesn't look dangerous, Hermione observed. More, lost. Harry couldn't explain why, but he felt a connection to Percy Jackson. Something in the way the other boy carried himself, the weight of responsibility in his posture, even as he stared in bewilderment at the floating candles. After the feast, Dumbledore rose to explain the Triwizard Tournament and unveil the Goblet of Fire. Throughout his speech, Percy remained quiet, though his expression grew troubled at mentions of the tournament's dangers. When Dumbledore concluded without mentioning Percy, the hall buzzed with speculation. As students began filing out, Harry felt a hand on his shoulder. Mr. Potter, Professor McGonagall said quietly. The headmaster would like a word with you. And you as well, Miss Granger, Mr. Weasley. They exchanged puzzled glances before following McGonagall to a small antechamber off the Great Hall. Inside, Dumbledore waited with Percy, who was examining a moving painting with fascination. Ah, Harry, excellent, Dumbledore said. I'd like to introduce you to Percy Jackson. Mr. Jackson, this is Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ronald Weasley. Percy nodded at them. Hey. An awkward silence followed until Hermione blurted, You're a demigod, aren't you? Son of Poseidon. Percy's eyebrows shot up. How did you, the way you controlled the water, your necklace, 5 beads, so 5 years at Camp Half-Blood. Plus, there was that oath you made on the river Styx. She blushed slightly. I've read about Greek mythology. It's not mythology where I come from, Percy said with a hint of a smile. Indeed, Dumbledore interjected. Which brings us to why I've asked you here, Harry. Mr. Jackson is our guest while we determine how to return him to his world. I believe you might help him acclimate to Hogwarts. Me, sir? Harry asked, surprised. Yes. You both have certain similarities that might foster understanding. Dumbledore's eyes held a familiar twinkle that made Harry suspicious. Additionally, I believe Mr. Jackson has combat experience that might prove valuable in the current climate. Harry studied Percy more carefully, noting the scars on his arms, the watchful alertness in his posture. You fight monsters? Since I was 12, Percy confirmed. You? Same, actually, Harry said, thinking of the basilisk, Quirrell, the Dementors. Percy's sea-green eyes widened with something like recognition. You've got that look, like you've seen too much for your age. Ron cleared his throat. So, what exactly are we supposed to do with him? Mr. Jackson will need somewhere to stay, Dumbledore said. I've taken the liberty of adding a bed to the fourth-year Gryffindor dormitory. Professor, Hermione began hesitantly, is that wise? He's not a student, and with the tournament, a fair concern, Miss Granger. However, I believe keeping Mr. Jackson close to Harry may benefit them both. Dumbledore turned to Percy. Unless you object. Percy shrugged. Beats sleeping in the stables like at camp. No offense to the Pegasi. Brilliant, Dumbledore clapped his hands together. Now, I suggest you all get some rest. The coming days promise to be interesting. As they left the antechamber, Harry noticed Percy glance back at Dumbledore with a puzzled expression. He's not telling us everything, Percy muttered, falling into step beside Harry. Harry snorted. Welcome to my world. The Gryffindor common room went silent when Harry entered with Percy. Fred and George were the first to recover, bounding forward with identical grins. So this is the mysterious American. Fred, or was it George, exclaimed. Sword Boy himself, the other twin agreed. Tell us, does everyone in America carry bronze swords, or is that just a you thing? Percy smiled despite himself. Just those of us with monster problems. The twins roared with laughter, assuming he was joking. Gradually, the other Gryffindors relaxed, curiosity overtaking suspicion. Soon Percy was surrounded by students asking questions about America, his sword, sorry, can't show it here, probably violates about 12 school rules, and whether he'd put his name in the goblet. I literally just got here, Percy pointed out. And I'm not exactly a wizard. Not a wizard? Seamus Finnegan looked scandalized. Then what are you? Before Percy could answer, Hermione cut in smoothly. He's an exchange student from an American magical tradition. Different from ours. Percy shot her a grateful look. Something told him that announcing his parentage to a room full of wizards might not go over well. Later, in the dormitory, Dean and Seamus continued pestering Percy with questions until Ron finally snapped, give it a rest, would you? The bloke's probably exhausted from being magically dumped in a freezing lake. As the others drifted off to sleep, Harry noticed Percy sitting by the window, staring at the lake in the moonlight. Can't sleep? Harry asked quietly. Percy shook his head. Water helps me think. Back home, I'd just dive in, but... He gestured to the distant lake. Too many giant squid and mere people. Too much explaining to do if I come back dry. Percy turned to face Harry. So, what's your story? Everyone around here treats you like you're famous. Harry hesitated, then decided Percy deserved honesty if they expected the same from him. There was this dark wizard, Voldemort. He killed my parents when I was a baby, tried to kill me too, but somehow the curse rebounded. Everyone thinks I defeated him, but I was just a baby. I don't remember it. Percy nodded slowly. But he's not really gone, is he? Harry stared at him. How did you know that? The way people talk around here, like they're waiting for something bad to happen. And the way Dumbledore looks at you, like you're carrying something heavy. Percy shrugged. I know the look because I see it in the mirror sometimes. There's a prophecy, Harry found himself saying, though he'd never told anyone this. At least, I think there is. Dumbledore never says it directly, but... But you know anyway, Percy finished, his expression grim. Yeah, prophecies are the worst. They hang over you like a sword, and everyone expects you to either fulfill them or get crushed by them. The casual way Percy spoke about prophecies made Harry realize he wasn't just making conversation. You have one too. A prophecy? Percy's hand went to his camp necklace, fingering one of the beads. A big one. A half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds. He trailed off. Let's just say it ends with me either saving or destroying the world. They sat in silence for a moment, two boys burdened with expectations neither had asked for. So, Percy finally said, got any idea who's trying to kill you this year? Because something tells me that fancy tournament isn't happening just for kicks. Harry couldn't help but laugh, surprising himself. I haven't figured that out yet. Well, Percy said with a lopsided grin, while I'm stuck here, maybe we can help each other stay alive. I'm pretty good at the not dying part, despite everyone's best efforts. Harry found himself smiling back. Deal. The next morning, Percy woke to find the dormitory empty except for Harry, who was pulling on his robes. Everyone's gone down to put their names in the goblet, Harry explained. Tournament fever. Percy yawned and stretched. Not tempted to enter yourself? No thanks. I've had enough danger for a lifetime. Harry hesitated. Besides, there's an age restriction, 17 or older. They headed down to breakfast together, drawing curious stares from students of all three schools. At the Gryffindor table, Hermione was already buried in a large, ancient-looking tome. Morning, Ron mumbled through a mouthful of toast. Hermione's been up for hours researching Greek, whatever. Demigods, Hermione corrected without looking up. Though there's precious little in the Hogwarts library. Most of it's considered mythology here. Percy peered at the page she was reading. That's, actually pretty accurate, except the part about Hades. He doesn't have fire for hair. And he's less evil, more, incredibly grumpy. Hermione slammed the book shut. You've met him? Actual Hades? He's my uncle, Percy said, reaching for a platter of bacon. Family reunions are awkward. Ron choked on his pumpkin juice while Harry stared. Percy continued eating as if he hadn't dropped a bombshell. Your uncle, Harry repeated slowly. Poseidon's my dad, so yeah. The whole Olympian Council is basically my extended family. Dysfunctional doesn't begin to cover it. Before they could ask more questions, owls swooped into the great hall, dropping letters and packages. Percy nearly fell off the bench in surprise. Postal owls, Hermione explained. How do you get mail in your world? Hermes Express, usually, Percy said, watching the birds with fascination. Sometimes wind spirits. As they ate, Percy told them about Camp Half-Blood, the cabins, the training, the Capture the Flag games. In return, Harry explained Hogwarts houses, Quidditch, and the basics of wand magic. By the time they finished breakfast, Percy had attracted a small audience of curious students from multiple houses. So you can control water? Dennis Creevy asked excitedly. Like, make it do tricks and stuff? Percy looked uncomfortable with the attention. It's not tricks. It's part of who I am. Could you show us? Someone else asked. Percy hesitated, glancing at Harry, who shrugged. I guess a small demonstration wouldn't hurt, Percy said. He concentrated on his goblet of pumpkin juice, and the liquid rose from the cup in a spiral, forming a miniature trident in midair before flowing back down. The students gasped and applauded. Percy looked embarrassed but pleased until a cold voice cut through the excitement. Wandless magic? Or just a cheap party trick? Draco Malfoy stood behind them, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. Neither, Percy said evenly. Just family talent. Malfoy's eyes narrowed. What family would that be? I don't recognize the name Jackson. It's an old family, Percy replied with a hint of a smile. Goes back about 4,000 years, give or take. Malfoy scoffed. No wizarding family, who said anything about wizards? Percy's smile vanished. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees as he stared Malfoy down. Something in Percy's eyes, a flash of power that didn't belong to a teenager, made Malfoy step back. My father will hear about this, he muttered, more out of habit than conviction, before walking away. That was brilliant, Ron said admiringly. What did you do to scare him off? Percy looked troubled. Nothing intentional. Sometimes the God part leaks through when I'm annoyed. Harry understood that feeling all too well, the way his own anger sometimes manifested in uncontrolled magic. Before he could say so, Professor McGonagall approached their table. Mr. Jackson, Professor Dumbledore requests your presence for testing, she said crisply. Potter, you're to come as well. Testing? Percy asked warily. What kind of testing? McGonagall's expression softened slightly. Nothing invasive, I assure you. The headmaster simply wishes to determine if you have any aptitude for wizarding magic while you're here. Dumbledore's office was crowded when they arrived. In addition to the headmaster, Snape and McGonagall were present, along with a short, white-haired wizard Percy didn't recognize. Ah, excellent timing, Dumbledore said cheerfully. Mr. Jackson, this is Mr. Ollivander, our finest wand maker. He's kindly agreed to determine if you might be compatible with a wand. Ollivander studied Percy with silvery eyes that seemed to see beyond his physical appearance. Fascinating. A son of Poseidon in Hogwarts. It's been centuries. Percy shifted uncomfortably. You can tell. The signs are there for those who know how to look, Ollivander said enigmatically. Now, let's see if Lady Hecate's blessing might extend to you as well. From a slender case, Ollivander removed several wands. These are special wands I keep for unusual cases. Try this first, cypress with mermaid hair core. Percy hesitantly took the wand. Nothing happened. Wave it, Harry suggested quietly. Percy gave it a flick. A weak spray of water splashed onto Dumbledore's desk, soaking several parchments. Interesting, but not quite right, Ollivander said, seemingly unfazed by the mess as he handed Percy another wand. Driftwood with crack and ink. This time, when Percy waved it, the wand emitted a high-pitched whine before cracking down its length. Ollivander snatched it back before it could break completely. Definitely not that one. 6 wands later, having caused minor flooding, a small whirlwind, and turned Snape's robes temporarily blue, Percy was ready to give up. Perhaps one more, Ollivander said, retrieving a final wand from his case. This one looked different, weathered and twisted, with veins of blue running through the wood. Olive wood soaked in the Aegean Sea for 1,000 years, with a core of hippocampus tail hair. A most unusual combination. The moment Percy's fingers closed around the handle, the room filled with the scent of ocean spray. A gentle blue-green aura surrounded him briefly, and when he waved the wand, a perfect miniature wave formed in the air before dissolving into mist. Remarkable, Ollivander breathed. It seems, Mr. Jackson, that you may indeed have some capacity for wizarding magic, though clearly influenced by your heritage. Percy stared at the wand in his hand. So I'm. What, part wizard now? Not exactly, Dumbledore explained. Think of it as accessing a different channel of your inherent power. Demigod abilities come directly from divine parentage. Wizarding magic channels through tools, primarily wands, to access the ambient magic of our world. Which was originally bestowed by Hecate, Hermione added, having apparently been researching in the corner the entire time. She held up an ancient text. According to this, Hecate blessed certain bloodlines millennia ago, creating the first wizards. That's why some Muggleborns suddenly manifest magic, dormant blessings awakening. Percy looked dubious. And you think I can use both types of power? It seems your arrival has created a unique opportunity, Dumbledore said. While we work to return you home, perhaps you might learn our ways, as Harry and his friends learned something of yours. Cross-cultural magical education, as it were. I thought you couldn't teach demigod abilities, Percy said. You have to be born with them. True, Dumbledore conceded. But strategies, combat techniques, ways of thinking, these can be shared. And in these troubled times, such exchanges could prove valuable. The way Dumbledore emphasized troubled times made Harry suspect there was more to this arrangement than academic interest. You think whatever brought Percy here is connected to Voldemort, Harry said bluntly. The adults exchanged glances. Finally, McGonagall spoke. We cannot discount the possibility, Potter. The timing is concerning. Kronos is rising in my world, Percy said slowly. And you've got your own Dark Lord problem here. What if they're connected somehow? Snape scoffed. The Dark Lord would hardly ally himself with mythological entities. They're not mythological to me, Percy shot back. And power-hungry tyrants tend to work the same way, regardless of which world they're trying to conquer. Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. A perspective worth considering, Severus. For now, however, I suggest we focus on immediate matters. He turned to Percy. Mr. Jackson, I believe you should keep that wand. Consider it a loan during your stay with us. Professor McGonagall has arranged a modified schedule for you, basic magical training alongside some regular classes with the fourth years. And in return? Percy asked, sensing there was more. Perhaps you might consider sharing some of your combat expertise with Harry? Unofficially, of course. Harry and Percy exchanged looks. There it was, Dumbledore's real reason for bringing them together. I'm in if he is, Percy said with a shrug. Harry nodded. When do we start? That evening, students gathered in the Great Hall for the selection of the Triwizard champions. Percy sat at the Gryffindor table between Harry and Hermione, still adjusting to the weight of the wand in his pocket. So this tournament, Percy said quietly. 3 schools each get 1 champion to compete in deadly tasks for eternal glory. That's the gist of it, Ron confirmed. Though they claim they've made it safer this year. Percy snorted. Right. Because deadly competitions involving teenagers always go according to plan. As Dumbledore dimmed the candles and approached the goblet of fire, Percy couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. The blue-white flames flickered hypnotically, reminding him uncomfortably of Kronos' sarcophagus. The goblet flared red, ejecting a charred piece of parchment. Dumbledore caught it and read, "The champion for Durmstrang will be Victor Krum." Cheers erupted from the Durmstrang delegation as Krum rose and headed toward a chamber off the hall. A second flare, another name, the champion for Beauxbatons is Fleur Delacour. A beautiful blonde girl stood gracefully, prompting Ron to sigh dreamily beside them. She's not human, Percy murmured to Hermione. Not entirely. Hermione looked surprised. How can you tell? Demigod senses. She's got that aura. Different from mine, but definitely not regular human. The goblet flared a third time. The Hogwarts champion is Cedric Diggory. The Hufflepuff table exploded with cheers as Cedric made his way to the chamber, grinning broadly. Excellent. Dumbledore called happily. We now have our 3 champions. But in the end, only one will go down in history as, the goblet's flames turned red once more, spitting out a 4th piece of parchment. Dumbledore caught it, staring at the name in apparent shock. The great hall fell silent. Percy felt Harry tense beside him. Harry Potter, Dumbledore read, his voice lacking its usual confidence. Percy swore under his breath as all eyes turned to Harry, whose face had gone deathly pale. I didn't put my name in, Harry whispered. You know I didn't. Go, Hermione urged. They're waiting. As Harry walked forward, looking smaller than ever under the collective stare of the hall, Percy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn evening. Someone wanted Harry in that tournament, someone who likely didn't have his best interests at heart. Well, Percy muttered, I think we just found this year's murder attempt. Chaos erupted after Harry's departure. Students from all houses shouted accusations, theories, and objections. At the staff table, the visiting headmasters looked furious, while the Hogwarts professors appeared deeply concerned. He couldn't have crossed the age line, Hermione insisted to anyone who would listen. Dumbledore drew it himself. Then someone else put his name in, Percy said, scanning the hall. Someone who wanted him in the tournament badly enough to cheat. Ron said nothing, his expression darkening as the commotion continued around them. Percy stood abruptly. I'm going to find him. You can't just barge into the champions' meeting, Hermione protested. Watch me. Percy headed toward the side chamber, ignoring the stares following him. Outside the door, he hesitated, hearing raised voices within. Through the crack, he could see Harry standing alone, facing a semicircle of angry adults. Did you get across the age line? A gruff, magical eye-bearing man was demanding. I didn't, Harry insisted. I didn't put my name in. Of course he is lying, said the enormous Beauxbatons headmistress. Percy had seen enough. He pushed the door open, stepping into the room with casual confidence. Hey, sorry to interrupt this witch hunt, pun intended, but I thought you might want a witness. All eyes turned to him. Snape's lip curled in disgust. This doesn't concern you, Jackson. Actually, I was with Harry all day, Percy lied smoothly. Including when the goblet was open for entries. He never approached it. Not once. Dumbledore studied Percy with interest. You're certain of this, Mr. Jackson? Absolutely, Percy maintained his gaze. Where I come from, we take oaths pretty seriously. I'd swear on the river Styx that Harry didn't enter himself, and trust me, that's not something I'd do lightly. Thunder rumbled overhead again, causing several people to look up in alarm. What was that? Asked a portly man in official-looking robes. Just the gods paying attention, Percy said casually. They tend to notice when their names get invoked. The confusion this statement created gave Harry a moment to catch his breath. He shot Percy a grateful look. Regardless of how Potter's name was entered, Snape said coldly, the fact remains that the goblet has selected him. According to Crouch, the magical contract is binding. The portly man, apparently Crouch, nodded stiffly. The boy has no choice. He must compete. Percy stepped closer to Harry, his stance subtly shifting to something more protective. So let me get this straight. Someone obviously set Harry up, probably hoping he'll get killed in this tournament, and your solution is to force him to participate anyway. The rules are clear, Crouch began. The rules were broken the moment a fourth name came out of that goblet, Percy countered. Why not break them a little more to keep a 14-year-old from facing life-threatening danger? Mr. Jackson, Dumbledore said quietly, while your concern is admirable, magical contracts cannot simply be ignored. The consequences could be dire. Percy wanted to argue further but recognized the finality in Dumbledore's tone. Instead, he turned to Harry. Then we'll make sure you're prepared. We? The gruff man asked suspiciously. Mad-Eye, this is Perseus Jackson, Dumbledore explained. Our exchange student from America. He has some unique abilities that might prove educational for all our students. Mad-Eye's magical eye swiveled to focus on Percy, seeming to look through him. Interesting. Very interesting. After more heated discussion, during which Percy maintained a protective position near Harry, the adults finally dispersed to deal with the implications of having 4 champions instead of 3. As they headed back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry finally spoke. Thanks. For backing me up in there. Percy shrugged. I know a setup when I see one. Besides, I've been the odd one out enough times to recognize the look. Do you believe me? That I didn't put my name in? Of course, Percy said without hesitation. Seeking danger voluntarily isn't your style. You've got enough of it finding you already. Harry laughed bitterly. You've got that right. When they reached the common room, they found it packed with Gryffindors ready to celebrate Harry's selection. Before anyone could swamp Harry with questions, Percy stepped forward. Hey, everyone, he called, his voice carrying with unexpected authority. Harry's had a rough night and needs some space. Save the party for when he actually wins something, okay? To Harry's surprise, the crowd quieted, some looking chastened. Even Fred and George nodded respectfully. How did you do that? Harry whispered as they made their way toward the dormitory stairs. Percy looked slightly embarrassed. Side effect of being a son of one of the big three. Sometimes people just listen. Comes in handy when commanding skeleton warriors or telling party-happy teenagers to back off. In the dormitory, they found Ron sitting alone on his bed, his expression unreadable. Hey, Harry said awkwardly. Ron looked up. So. Champion, huh? Figured out how you're going to enjoy your fame yet? Harry's face fell. You don't think I put my name in too, do you? Didn't you? Ron's voice was cold. Before Harry could respond, Percy stepped between them. Okay, I'm going to stop this right now because I've seen this movie before. Ron, he didn't enter. Someone's trying to get him killed. Again. And Harry, Ron's feeling left out and probably worried about you, but he's too stubborn to say it. Both boys stared at Percy in shock. What? Percy said. I've had plenty of fights with friends. They suck, and they're almost always based on miscommunication. So can we skip to the part where you both realize you're being idiots? Ron's ears turned red. You don't know anything about it. I know. Harry looked terrified when his name came out, not excited, Percy countered. And I know you've been friends long enough to recognize when he's in trouble versus when he's seeking attention. An uncomfortable silence followed. Finally, Ron muttered, so someone's really trying to kill you? Again. Harry nodded. Looks that way. Great, Ron sighed. Just once I'd like a normal year. The tension broke. Harry sat on his own bed, relief evident on his face. Me too. Percy smiled slightly, reminding himself that for all their magical abilities, they were still just 14-year-old boys. So, now that we've sorted that out, should we start planning how to keep Harry alive? What did you have in mind? Harry asked. Percy's expression turned serious. At camp, we train for combat daily. Swordplay, strategy, monster identification, survival skills. I'm thinking we adapt that to prepare you for whatever these tasks might be. I'm in, Ron said immediately. Hermione will help with research, obviously. And I can teach you some demigod tricks, Percy added. They might not work exactly the same for you, but the principles could help. For the first time since his name had come out of the goblet, Harry felt a flicker of hope. When do we start? Percy's grin reminded Harry of the twins when they were plotting something particularly daring. How does tomorrow at dawn sound? True to his word, Percy woke Harry before sunrise the next morning, already dressed in an orange camp half-blood t-shirt and track pants. Rise and shine, future champion, Percy said, much too cheerfully for the hour. Harry groaned, fumbling for his glasses. Is this how they wake you at demigod camp? Nah, usually it's the sound of someone screaming because a hellhound got past the boundaries. This is much nicer. 15 minutes later, they were jogging around the misty Quidditch pitch, Percy setting a pace that had Harry gasping for breath within minutes. Physical training wasn't part of the deal, Harry panted. It is now, Percy replied, barely winded. First rule of surviving impossible situations, you need stamina. Can't fight or run if you're out of breath. After 3 excruciating laps, Percy finally allowed Harry to collapse onto the dewy grass. Not bad for a wizard, Percy said, dropping down beside him. Most first-timers at camp don't make it halfway around before puking. Comforting, Harry muttered, staring up at the gradually lightening sky. So this is what demigods do. Run until they drop. That's just the warm-up. Then comes weapons training, strategy games, monster fighting techniques, wilderness survival. Percy counted off on his fingers. But I figured we'd start simple. Get your body used to moving before we add the complicated stuff. Harry propped himself up on his elbows. You really think this will help with the tournament? Percy's expression turned serious. I don't know what the tasks will be, but I do know this. In any dangerous situation, being stronger, faster, and more aware of your surroundings improves your odds of survival. Wizards rely too much on their wands. What happens if you lose it? Or if it breaks? The question hit uncomfortably close to home. Harry remembered all too well his confrontation with Quirrell in first year, and the Chamber of Secrets when his wand had been knocked away. Okay, Harry said with new determination. What's next? Now we work on your reflexes. Percy pulled a handful of small pebbles from his pocket. Catch. Without warning, he flicked a pebble at Harry's shoulder. Harry flinched but didn't catch it. Again, Percy said, tossing another. This time Harry's hand moved, but too late. For the next 20 minutes, Percy continued throwing pebbles from different angles and distances. Harry gradually improved, though most still bounced off him. Not terrible, Percy finally said. Now let's try something more challenging. He pulled out his ballpoint pen and uncapped it, the bronze sword expanding to full length in a heartbeat. Harry couldn't help but stare. The transformation was still impressive, even after seeing it several times. Riptide, Percy explained, noticing Harry's fascination. Celestial bronze. Only works on monsters and demigods, which is lucky for you. Why lucky for me? Percy grinned. Because now I'm going to teach you how to dodge. What followed was 30 minutes of Percy making deliberately slow, telegraphed sword swings while Harry attempted to avoid them. Despite Percy's restraint, Harry collected several bruises from the flat of the blade when he zigged instead of zagged. Sorry, Percy winced after a particularly solid hit to Harry's thigh. But hey, better a bruise now than whatever nasty surprise the tournament has waiting. Harry rubbed his leg, grimacing. If I survive your training, the tournament will be easy. That's the spirit. Percy capped Riptide, returning it to pen form. Same time tomorrow? Harry groaned but nodded. What about magical training? I thought you were going to learn wizardry while I learned demigod stuff. Fair point. Percy pulled out his new wand somewhat awkwardly, still clearly uncomfortable with it. How about you teach me a useful spell, and I'll teach you a useful demigod trick. Deal. What demigod trick? Percy considered for a moment. Let's start with something basic but essential, how to analyze a battlefield and identify advantages. Harry frowned. The tournament tasks aren't exactly battles. Everything's a battle when someone's trying to kill you, Percy said matter-of-factly. Whether it's a monster with fangs or a magical obstacle course, the principle is the same: identify threats, find advantages, exploit weaknesses. He gestured around the Quidditch pitch. For instance, if we were fighting here, what would your advantages be? Harry thought about it. I know the layout. I'm comfortable on a broomstick. There are places to hide in the stands or behind the goal hoops. Good start, Percy nodded. And disadvantages? Open space makes it hard to take cover. No natural features to use. Exactly. Now, if I were fighting here, Percy's eyes darted to the distant lake. I'd try to move the battle closer to water. Always play to your strengths. Harry was beginning to see the value in Percy's approach. It wasn't just about physical training but a complete mindset shift, treating every dangerous situation as a puzzle with potential solutions. "My turn," Harry said, pulling out his wand. "What spell do you want to learn first?" Percy didn't hesitate. "Something defensive. A shield or barrier." Protego is the basic shield charm, but it's actually pretty advanced. Harry considered. "Let's start with something simpler. Expelliarmus, the disarming charm. If you can take away an opponent's wand, you've basically won." Harry demonstrated the wand movement and pronunciation, then had Percy practice on him. Percy's first attempts produced only weak sparks, but after several tries, Harry's wand gave a small jump in his hand. "You're getting it," Harry encouraged. "Try thinking about water pushing against something, forcing it away." Percy closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with new focus. Expelliarmus. This time, Harry's wand flew from his grip, landing several feet away. Percy looked as surprised as Harry felt. "I did it." Percy grinned, then frowned slightly. "Though it felt weird, like I was pushing the magic through the wand rather than the wand channeling magic." "However it works, Harry said, retrieving his wand. "That's a useful spell in a duel." As they headed back to the castle for breakfast, Percy said thoughtfully, "Tomorrow we should bring Ron and Hermione. Ron's got good strategic thinking from chess, and Hermione can help connect demigod concepts with wizard ones." Harry nodded, surprised by how methodical Percy was about training. "You've done this before, haven't you? Trained people, I mean." "At camp, older campers help train younger ones," Percy explained. "But honestly, most of what I know comes from surviving when I should have died. Trial by fire, or monster acid, or divine lightning, or whatever the threat of the week was." The casual way Percy discussed near-death experiences reminded Harry that despite his easygoing demeanor, Percy Jackson had seen his share of horrors. Perhaps that's why Harry found his company comforting. Percy understood what it meant to have destiny thrust upon you without asking for it. "Thanks," Harry said suddenly. "For helping me. You could have just focused on finding your way home." Percy shrugged. "Where I come from, we look out for each other. Besides, I've got a feeling that whatever brought me here is connected to what's happening to you. Solving one problem might solve both." As they entered the great hall for breakfast, students turned to stare at Harry, some hostile, others curious. The weight of being the unexpected fourth champion settled back onto his shoulders. "Ignore them," Percy advised quietly. "Focus on what matters, staying alive and figuring out who's behind this. The rest is just noise." Harry took a deep breath and nodded. With Percy beside him and Ron and Hermione waiting at the Gryffindor table, he felt more prepared to face whatever was coming, both in the tournament and beyond. Over the next week, a routine developed. Mornings began with physical training led by Percy, now including Ron and Hermione. Afternoons were split between regular classes for Harry and introductory magic lessons for Percy, who struggled with wand movements but showed surprising aptitude for certain spells, particularly those related to water or movement. Evenings were dedicated to research in the library, where Hermione divided her time between helping Harry prepare for potential tournament tasks and investigating possible connections between the Greek and Wizarding worlds. "Listen to this," she said one evening, voice hushed with excitement. "In the time of Merlin, it is said that the goddess Hecate herself walked among wizard kind, guiding the development of wand lore and potion making. Some scholars believe Merlin himself was Hecate's son, explaining his unparalleled magical abilities." Percy looked up from the defensive spells book he'd been struggling through. "So Merlin was a demigod?" "Possibly," Hermione said. "Which might explain why you can use a wand at all. There could be a fundamental connection between demigod abilities and wizarding magic." "That's fascinating and all," Ron interjected, "but how does it help Harry not die in the first task?" Hermione huffed. "Knowledge is always useful, Ronald. Besides, if Percy can access both forms of magic, perhaps Harry can learn to tap into some aspects of demigod abilities too." I don't think it works that way, Percy said doubtfully. My powers come directly from my dad. Unless Zeus is Harry's great-grandfather or something. Harry, who had been scanning a book on famous magical tournaments, suddenly sat straighter. Guys, I think I found something about the first task. They gathered around as Harry pointed to a passage. Traditionally, the first task tests the champion's courage in the face of the unknown. Historically, this has often involved magical creatures of significant danger rating, requiring champions to demonstrate bravery, quick thinking, and magical prowess rather than pre-planned strategy. Magical creatures, Percy repeated. Like monsters? Could be anything, Ron said, looking worried. Dragons, manticores, acromantulas. Dragon, Percy and Harry said simultaneously. What makes you so sure? Hermione asked. Harry shrugged. Hagrid loves dragons. This tournament is at Hogwarts. It just fits. And I've fought enough monsters to know how these things work, Percy added. The first challenge is always something flashy and terrifying to weed out the weak links. Dragons are perfect for that. Hermione bit her lip. If it is dragons, what's the strategy? Percy stood, pacing between the bookshelves. Depends on the goal. Do you need to kill it? Steal from it? Get past it? Most likely steal or retrieve something, Harry said. Killing a dragon would be nearly impossible. And illegal, Hermione added. They're protected species. Percy snorted. Glad to know wizards draw the line somewhere. Okay, so retrieving something from a dragon. You're going to need speed, distraction, and a way to protect yourself from fire. The conjunctivitis curse. Hermione exclaimed. Dragons' eyes are their weak point. But then you've got an angry, blind dragon thrashing around, Percy pointed out. Not ideal. What about flying? Ron suggested. Harry's brilliant on a broom. Percy's eyes lit up. That's it. Air superiority is a huge advantage against ground-based threats. If you could get your broomstick into the arena. Summoning charm, Hermione said immediately. Harry, you could summon your firebolt once you're in the arena. Harry felt a spark of hope. I could outfly a dragon. But the summoning charm. I'm not great at it yet. Then that's our focus, Percy decided. Harry masters the summoning charm, and we work on aerial evasion tactics. As they continued planning, Professor McGonagall approached their table. Mr. Jackson, Professor Dumbledore requests your presence. Something about development regarding your situation. Percy exchanged glances with the others. I'll be back. Keep working on the dragon plan. Following McGonagall through the corridors, Percy asked, has Dumbledore figured out how to send me home? Not exactly, she replied cryptically. But I believe you'll find this meeting illuminating. When they reached the stone gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office, McGonagall provided the password, fizzing whiz-bee, and departed, leaving Percy to ascend the spiral staircase alone. Pushing open the office door, Percy stopped short. Beside Dumbledore's desk stood a familiar figure with curly blonde hair and stormy gray eyes, wearing an orange camp shirt and jeans. Annabeth? She whirled around, her face breaking into a relieved smile. Seaweed brain. Percy crossed the room in 3 strides, sweeping her into a tight embrace. For a moment, the strangeness of Hogwarts faded away as he buried his face in her hair, breathing in the familiar lemon scent of her shampoo. How, he finally managed, pulling back to look at her. How are you here? The same way you arrived, it seems, Dumbledore said pleasantly from behind his desk. Though Miss Chase's entrance was somewhat less dramatic, she appeared at the edge of the forbidden forest rather than in the middle of our lake. Annabeth's expression turned serious as she pulled away from Percy, though she kept hold of his hand. It wasn't an accident, Percy. The portal that brought you here, someone created it deliberately. Who? Why? That's what we need to figure out. Annabeth turned to Dumbledore. "Thank you for bringing me to Percy right away, Professor." Dumbledore inclined his head. "I suspected you might have insights into Mr. Jackson's unexpected arrival. I take it you've been searching for him?" "For 3 days," Annabeth confirmed. "The entire camp has been looking." Then Rachel, our oracle, had a vision showing Percy at a castle with a boy who has a lightning scar. Percy's eyes widened. "Harry." The prophecy mentioned Harry. Not by name, but the description was clear enough. Rachel drew this. Annabeth pulled a folded paper from her pocket and spread it on Dumbledore's desk. The sketch showed Harry and Percy standing back to back, surrounded by darkness. Harry held his wand aloft, while Percy gripped Riptide. Between them floated 2 symbols, a triangle containing a circle and a line, and a scythe. "The Deathly Hallows and Kronos' symbol," Dumbledore murmured, studying the drawing intently. "Most concerning. You recognize this triangle symbol?" Annabeth asked sharply. "Indeed, Miss Chase. It represents powerful magical artifacts from wizarding legend. The scythe, I presume, belongs to your Titan Lord?" Percy nodded grimly. "Kronos' symbol. But what does it mean? Is Kronos somehow connected to these wizard artifacts? Or someone wants us to think they are," Annabeth said thoughtfully. "Chiron sent me to find you with a message. The worlds were separated for a reason. Their reunion heralds either salvation or destruction." "Cryptic as always," Percy sighed. "So someone deliberately brought me here to connect our worlds, and now you too. But why?" Dumbledore steepled his fingers. "I believe, Mr. Jackson, that you and Harry may be at the center of something much larger than a tournament or even a single Dark Lord's return. The timing of your arrival, coinciding with Harry's selection as champion, suggests orchestration beyond mere coincidence. We need to tell Harry," Percy said immediately. "And figure out how Kronos and Voldemort might be connected." "Indeed." Dumbledore rose from his desk. "Miss Chase, as we now have 2 demigods in our midst, I believe we should make arrangements for your stay as well. Perhaps Gryffindor Tower would be suitable. I understand they've become quite accustomed to Mr. Jackson's presence." Annabeth looked to Percy, who nodded encouragingly. "That would work, sir. Though I'd like to help with research into the connection between our worlds." "I anticipated as much," Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Professor McGonagall will show you to the girls' dormitory, and you'll have full access to our library. I suspect Miss Granger will be delighted to have another research-minded individual to consult with." As they prepared to leave, Dumbledore added, "One more thing, Mr. Jackson. In light of Miss Chase's arrival and the potential connection to Voldemort, I believe it's time to intensify Harry's preparation. The first task approaches rapidly." Percy nodded solemnly. "We're already working on it, sir. And with Annabeth here. Well, if anyone can figure out the connection between Greek gods and evil wizards, it's her." Annabeth rolled her eyes but squeezed his hand appreciatively. "Let's go find Harry. If our worlds are colliding, he needs to know what he's really up against." As they descended the spiral staircase, Percy felt a strange mixture of relief and foreboding. Having Annabeth beside him made everything better, but her presence confirmed that whatever had brought him to Hogwarts was part of something much bigger and potentially much more dangerous than he'd imagined. The introduction of Annabeth to Harry, Ron, and Hermione went better than Percy might have expected. After initial skepticism, primarily from Hermione, who peppered Annabeth with questions about demigod culture and architecture, the 2 groups settled into a collaborative strategy session in the Room of Requirement, which Dobby had shown Harry earlier that day. "So both our worlds have prophecies about chosen ones who have to defeat Dark Lords," Annabeth summarized, standing before a wall where she'd sketched connections between Kronos and Voldemort. "Both Dark Lords were defeated once but are returning to power. And now something or someone is deliberately bringing these separate magical traditions together." "But why?" Ron asked, sprawled in an armchair. "What does you-know-who gain by bringing demigods into the mix?" "Power," Harry said quietly. If there's one thing I know about Voldemort, it's that he's obsessed with power and immortality. If he learned about actual immortal beings. Percy shuddered. And Kronos is all about conquering new domains. A whole magical world he never knew existed. That would definitely interest him. Hermione, who had been furiously taking notes, looked up. But how would they even know about each other? According to what we've researched, the wizarding and demigod worlds have been deliberately separated for centuries. Someone who moves between worlds, Annabeth suggested. A bridge figure. A heavy silence fell as they considered the implications. Could it be Hecate? Percy suggested. She's connected to both worlds, right? Annabeth shook her head. The gods are bound by ancient laws. They can't interfere this directly. It would have to be someone else, someone with knowledge of both traditions. Harry suddenly sat up straighter. What if it's not about bringing our worlds together, but about bringing Percy and me together specifically? The two chosen ones from separate prophecies? A distraction, Hermione said slowly. While we're busy figuring out this connection, someone else is making their move, Annabeth finished, exchanging a look of understanding with Hermione. Percy glanced at Harry. Meanwhile, you've still got a tournament to survive. The first task is in 3 days, Harry confirmed grimly. Dragons, like we suspected. Hagrid showed me last night. Percy clapped his hands together decisively. Okay, so we work 2 problems simultaneously. Harry's immediate survival in the tournament, and the bigger mystery of who's connecting our worlds and why. Annabeth, you and Hermione focus on the research angle, already planning to, Annabeth said with a small smile. While Harry, Ron, and I continue tournament prep. Percy turned to Harry. How's the summoning charm coming? Harry demonstrated by summoning a book from across the room. It flew directly into his hand with impressive speed. Good. Now try it from further away, Percy suggested. Like, outside the room. Harry looked dubious but stepped into the corridor, closing the door behind him. A moment later, they heard Accio book, and the same book wiggled free from the pile and soared toward the door, which Harry opened just in time to catch it. Not bad, Percy said when Harry returned. But your firebolt will be all the way in your dormitory. We need to practice with real distance. And real pressure, Annabeth added. In the arena, with a dragon bearing down on you, your concentration will be tested. For the next several hours, they worked out a comprehensive training plan. Percy and Harry would continue physical conditioning in the mornings, now with obstacle courses designed to simulate dragon evasion. Afternoons would be split between summoning charm practice at increasing distances and strategic planning. Evenings would be dedicated to research, with Annabeth and Hermione taking the lead. As they finished their planning, Ron said suddenly, "We're forgetting something important." Percy said Annabeth arrived at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, right? What if others follow? More demigods, or worse, monsters. The thought sobered them all. Percy and Annabeth exchanged worried glances. Ron's right, Percy said. If the barriers between worlds are weakening, monsters could find their way through. And trust me, you don't want Dracini or hellhounds wandering around your school grounds. We need to establish a patrol, Annabeth decided. Check the areas where reality seems thinnest, where Percy and I arrived. I'll help, Harry offered immediately. I've got the Marauders map, it shows everyone on Hogwarts grounds. If something unusual appears. Perfect, Annabeth nodded appreciatively. We'll take shifts. This could be bigger than just the tournament now. As they dispersed for the night, Hermione showing Annabeth to the girls' dormitory while the boys headed to theirs, Harry pulled Percy aside. Do you think we can handle this? He asked quietly. Dragons and Dark Lords and whatever else is coming? Percy considered for a moment before responding. One of the first lessons of being a demigod is accepting that there will always be monsters, always be quests, always be impossible odds. The trick isn't handling everything perfectly, it's just not giving up. Harry nodded slowly. One challenge at a time. Exactly. Dragon first, interdimensional magical conspiracy second. Harry laughed despite himself. When you put it that way, it almost sounds manageable. That's the spirit, Percy clapped him on the shoulder. Now get some sleep. Dragons don't slay themselves, or, get outwitted by skinny wizard kids on broomsticks. Harry shoved him playfully before heading up the stairs. Despite the looming danger, he felt something he hadn't experienced since his name emerged from the goblet: confidence. With Percy, Annabeth, Ron, and Hermione backing him, maybe he could survive whatever was coming. Little did he know that beyond the castle walls, in the depths of the Forbidden Forest, another portal was beginning to form, one that would soon bring more than just allies into their world. The morning of the first task dawned clear and cold. Harry woke early, stomach churning with anxiety despite weeks of preparation. He found Percy already dressed, staring out the dormitory window toward the distant arena that had been constructed for the tournament. Couldn't sleep? Harry asked, reaching for his glasses. Percy shook his head. ADHD. Gets worse before battles. Been up since 4 analyzing every possible scenario. And you're as ready as you can be. Percy turned from the window. Summoning charm is solid. Flying skills are exceptional. You know what to expect. All that's left is execution. Harry appreciated Percy's straightforward assessment. No false reassurance, just confidence in their preparation. They met the others in the common room, where Annabeth was reviewing a parchment covered in diagrams of dragon weak points. Hermione looked nearly as nervous as Harry felt, while Ron was unusually quiet. Remember, Annabeth said, handing the parchment to Harry, dragons are essentially reptiles. Cold-blooded, excellent vision, sensitive to movement. Their fire is their primary weapon, but the tail is just as dangerous. Stay high, stay moving, don't get predictable, Harry recited the mantra they'd established during training. Summon the firebolt as soon as I enter the arena, and don't attempt the retrieval until I've got the dragon distracted. You've got this, Percy said firmly. We'll be in the stands, but from the moment you enter that arena, it's all you. Trust your instincts. Hermione suddenly threw her arms around Harry in a fierce hug. Be careful. Yeah, don't die, Ron added awkwardly. That would be a real mood killer. Harry managed a weak smile. I'll do my best. As they headed down to breakfast, Percy walked alongside Harry, keeping his voice low. One more thing. If something goes wrong, if the plan falls apart, remember what I taught you about battlefield assessment. Look for water sources, high ground, cover. Every arena has advantages if you know where to look. Harry nodded gratefully. In the Great Hall, he forced down a piece of toast despite his churning stomach. All too soon, Professor McGonagall approached the Gryffindor table. Potter, it's time. The champions are gathering in the tent by the arena. With a final look at his friends, Harry followed McGonagall across the grounds toward a large tent erected beside the newly constructed stadium. The distant roars of dragons carried on the morning air, sending shivers down his spine. At the tent entrance, McGonagall surprised him with an uncharacteristic display of emotion. Just do your best, Potter. Keep a cool head. We've got wizards standing by to control the situation if it gets out of hand. The main thing is to do your best, and nobody will think any the worse of you. Harry nodded, too nervous to speak, and ducked into the tent. Inside, Cedric paced back and forth, while Crumb stood stoically in a corner. Fleur sat on a small stool, looking pale but composed. None of them spoke as Harry took a position near the entrance, mentally reviewing their plan. Ludo Bagman bounced in shortly after, explaining the task. Each champion would face a different dragon, retrieving a golden egg from its nest. When Harry drew the Hungarian horntail, widely regarded as the most dangerous dragon species, he felt a moment of despair before Percy's training kicked in. The most dangerous opponent meant the most glory in victory. A demigod perspective that oddly calmed his nerves. After Cedric departed to face his dragon, Harry closed his eyes, centering himself the way Percy had taught him. In his mind, he visualized the firebolt responding to his summons, the dragon's movements, his own flight path. By the time his turn came, Harry felt a strange clarity descend. As he stepped into the arena to face the Horntail, the crowd's roar faded to background noise. The massive black dragon crouched over her clutch of eggs, yellow eyes fixed on him with predatory focus. Harry raised his wand. "Accio Firebolt," he shouted, voice steady and confident. Then he waited, ducking behind a boulder as the Horntail sent a jet of flame in his direction. The heat was incredible, singeing his hair even from behind cover. In the stands, Percy leaned forward tensely. Come on," he muttered. Beside him, Annabeth squeezed his hand. "The plan is solid. He just needs to execute." The distant sound of something speeding through the air made Percy grin. "Here it comes." Harry's firebolt soared into the arena, hovering obediently at his side. In one fluid motion, he mounted the broom and kicked off, rising high above the Horntail. The crowd gasped and cheered as Harry began his aerial dance, diving, feinting, drawing the dragon away from her eggs. "He's good," Annabeth observed, watching Harry's controlled movements. "Really good." Percy nodded proudly. "We practiced those maneuvers for hours. Made him dodge tennis balls enchanted to follow him." The Horntail, frustrated by Harry's elusiveness, unfurled her massive wings and rose into the air, breaking her chain. Collective gasps echoed through the stands as the dragon pursued Harry beyond the confines of the arena. "This wasn't part of the plan," Hermione whispered anxiously. "No," Percy agreed, "but he's handling it." Indeed, Harry had adapted instantly to the new threat, leading the Horntail on a chase around Hogwarts towers before executing a daring dive that the heavier dragon couldn't match. When he streaked back into the arena, the dragon several seconds behind, Harry swooped down, snatched the golden egg, and pulled up just as dragon handlers rushed in to subdue the returning Horntail. The stadium erupted in wild cheers. Percy, Annabeth, Ron, and Hermione leapt to their feet, shouting themselves hoarse as Harry took a victory lap around the arena, golden egg clutched triumphantly to his chest. "He did it!" Ron bellowed, pounding Percy on the back. "He bloody did it!" Percy grinned, watching Harry's expression of exhilarated relief. Never doubted him for a second. Later, in the champion's tent, Harry received treatment for minor burns and cuts before his friends were allowed to visit. Percy was the first through the door, giving Harry a congratulatory punch to the shoulder. "That was some flying," Percy said admiringly. Even Annabeth was impressed, and she hates flying on principle. "Thanks," Harry said, grinning tiredly. "Couldn't have done it without your training." "Oh please," Hermione interjected, hugging Harry carefully around his bandaged arm. "You're a natural flyer. Percy just helped you channel it strategically." Ron, who had fully reconciled with Harry in the lead-up to the task, was practically bouncing with excitement. "You should have seen Malfoy's face when you got that egg. Looked like he'd swallowed a particularly nasty Bertie Bott's bean." As they celebrated Harry's success, Percy noticed Annabeth standing slightly apart, her expression distant and troubled. "What is it?" he asked quietly, moving to her side. "During the task," she murmured, "I felt something. A shift. Like reality thinning somewhere on the grounds." Percy's smile faded. "Another portal? Maybe. Or something coming through an existing one." She met his eyes. "I think we should check the forest tonight." Percy nodded grimly. "I'll tell Harry. If something crossed over during the excitement of the tournament. Then we might have more than dragons to worry about," Annabeth finished. Their moment was interrupted by Ludo Bagman announcing the scores. When Harry tied for first place with Crumb, the celebration resumed with renewed vigor. As his friends congratulated him, Harry caught Percy's serious expression and raised an eyebrow in question. Percy mouthed later, just as the golden egg in Harry's hands began to emit a strange, pulsing glow. Is it supposed to do that? Percy asked as everyone fell silent, staring at the egg. Harry shook his head slowly. I don't think so. Before anyone could react further, the egg's glow intensified, bathing the tent in golden light. Strange symbols appeared on its surface, Greek letters intermingled with runes. That's ancient Greek, Annabeth said, moving closer. And those other markings? Old Norse, Hermione whispered. The magical language of ancient wizards. As they watched in stunned silence, the symbols rearranged themselves into a message that glowed brightly before fading away. When sea and lightning unite beneath the fractured sky, the twice-sundered worlds shall once more align. Child of water, child of fate, beware the Titan's grasp, for in darkness bound, ancient powers shall rise at last. The glow subsided, leaving the egg seemingly normal again. Harry looked up to find everyone staring at him and Percy. Well, Percy said after a long moment, I guess we know for sure our problems are connected now. Harry nodded, the elation of his victory evaporating as the weight of a new prophecy settled over them. And whatever's coming, it's bigger than Voldemort or Kronos alone. The twice-sundered worlds, Hermione repeated thoughtfully. The magical world separated from muggles, and the god world separated from mortals. And now someone's bringing them all together, Annabeth concluded. Starting with Percy and Harry. Percy picked up the egg, turning it over in his hands. One task down, but something tells me the tournament is just the beginning. Harry met his gaze with newfound determination. Then we'd better be ready for whatever comes next. Outside the tent, the November wind carried the distant sound of howls from the forbidden forest, howls that belonged to no ordinary wolves, but to creatures that shouldn't exist in the wizarding world at all. Chapter 2, Blood and Magic. The forbidden forest lived up to its name at night. Towering trees blocked the moonlight, their twisted branches creating phantom shapes that seemed to reach for the four teenagers creeping between ancient trunks. Harry led the way, wand illuminating a narrow path with a soft lumos, while Percy and Annabeth flanked him with weapons drawn. Hermione brought up the rear, constantly glancing over her shoulder. We should have brought Ron, Hermione whispered. He's covering for us with McGonagall, Harry reminded her. Besides, Four is already pushing our luck. Percy adjusted his grip on Riptide, the sword's faint bronze glow adding to their light. Annabeth, you're sure you felt something cross over here? Positive. Annabeth's stormy gray eyes scanned the darkness. During Harry's task, when everyone was distracted. It felt like a tear in reality. They paused at a small clearing. Around them, the forest had gone unnaturally silent, no insects chirping, no leaves rustling. I don't like this, Harry murmured. Even the centaurs are keeping away. Percy suddenly tensed. Water ahead. A stream or pond. Harry raised an eyebrow. You can sense that? Son of Poseidon, Percy shrugged. I can feel water the way you can feel. I don't know, magic stuff. Eloquent as always, seaweed brain, Annabeth said, but her teasing smile faded quickly. Wait, do you hear that? A low growl emanated from the darkness beyond their light. Not the growl of an acromantula or wolf, but something deeper, wetter, almost reptilian. Dracena, Percy whispered, immediately shifting into a combat stance. Snake women. They're drawn to demigods like moths to flame. Snake women. Hermione repeated, her voice rising slightly. That's not in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Because they're not from your world, Annabeth explained tensely. They're from ours. Which means, the Dracena burst from the undergrowth with startling speed, a woman's torso atop a double serpent trunk instead of legs. Her face might have been beautiful if not for the forked tongue flicking between pointed teeth and the reptilian slits for pupils. Demigodsis, she hissed with obvious relish. So far from home. Percy didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, Riptide slashing in a deadly arc, but the Dracena was surprisingly agile, twisting away from his strike. Stupefy! Harry shouted, red light shooting from his wand. The spell hit the creature square in the chest but seemed only to anger her. Wizard magic, she spat. Weak against my kind. Annabeth circled to the creature's flank, her celestial bronze dagger glinting. Percy, monsters from our world are crossing over. Harry, your spells might not work on them. Percy dodged a vicious swipe from the Dracena's claws. Any bright ideas, wise girl? Combined attack, Annabeth called. Harry, try elemental magic, fire or water. Hermione, shield charm. Hermione reacted instantly. Protego. A shimmering barrier appeared just as the Dracena launched herself at Percy. Incendio. Harry's wand erupted with flames that caught the creature's serpentine lower half. She shrieked, momentarily distracted, giving Percy the opening he needed. Riptide swept forward in a clean arc, and the Dracena dissolved into golden dust. What just happened? Hermione stared at the pile of glittering particles. Where's the body? Monsters don't leave bodies, Percy explained, already scanning the darkness for more threats. They disintegrate and eventually reform in Tartarus. At least, that's how it works in our world. But we're not in your world, Harry pointed out. So the question is, will they reform here? Annabeth finished grimly. We don't know. But one thing's clear, the barriers between worlds are weakening. That Dracena shouldn't have been able to cross over at all. They pressed deeper into the forest, following Percy's water sense until they reached a small, dark pond. Its surface was unnaturally still, reflecting stars like a perfect mirror. At its edge, reality seemed to shimmer, a barely visible distortion in the air. That's it, Annabeth whispered. A tear between worlds. Similar to the one that brought us here, but smaller. Percy cautiously approached the rippling air. Can we close it? Not without understanding what created it in the first place. Annabeth pulled a small notebook from her pocket and began sketching the area. But maybe we can ward it somehow, prevent more monsters from crossing. Harry studied the anomaly. Wizarding barriers might work. Protective enchantments, like those around Hogwarts. Combined with Greek protections, Annabeth nodded. Percy, we need salt water. Percy concentrated, and a small stream of water rose from the pond, hovering in the air. Will this work if I make it salty? Should do. It's about intent and divine energy, not just the physical components. As Percy and Annabeth worked on creating a makeshift barrier using demigod methods, Harry and Hermione began casting protective spells, Hermione's precise, textbook incantations blending with Harry's more intuitive approach. Protego tot alum, Hermione murmured, moving her wand in complex patterns. Salvio Hashia, Harry added, tracing symbols in the air around the tear. For nearly an hour they worked, weaving Greek and wizarding protections into a complex lattice of magic. Finally, Annabeth stepped back, surveying their handiwork with critical eyes. It's not perfect, she admitted. But it should slow any crossovers until we can find a permanent solution. More importantly, Percy said, capping Riptide and returning it to pen form, we've confirmed that someone or something is deliberately connecting our worlds. That Dracena didn't stumble through by accident. And they're targeting Hogwarts specifically, Harry added. With the tournament already creating chaos. It's the perfect distraction, Hermione concluded. While everyone focuses on dragons and golden eggs, an interdimensional invasion begins right under our noses, Annabeth finished. We need to tell Dumbledore. As they turned to head back to the castle, Percy suddenly froze, eyes fixed on the pond's surface. Wait. Something's happening. The still water began to ripple, forming concentric circles that expanded outward. In its dark surface, images appeared, not reflections, but visions, a pale, snake-like face with red eyes, a golden sarcophagus adorned with scenes of destruction, Harry tied to a gravestone, Percy struggling against a crushing force of darkness. Voldemort, Harry whispered, a cold dread washing over him. And Kronos, Percy confirmed, his face pale in the moonlight. They're connecting somehow. The visions faded, leaving the pond's surface still once more. For a long moment, none of them spoke, processing the implications of what they'd seen. Finally, Harry broke the silence. I think we need to solve this egg puzzle sooner rather than later. Dumbledore listened to their report the following morning with grave attention, his normally twinkling eyes serious behind half-moon spectacles. When they finished recounting the events in the forest, he rose from behind his desk and crossed to a cabinet containing the pensieve. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to Harry's temple with his wand. Harry nodded, and Dumbledore gently extracted the silvery memory strand, placing it in the stone basin. The five of them, Dumbledore, Harry, Percy, Annabeth, and Hermione, gathered around as the memory played out in its swirling depths. Most concerning, Dumbledore murmured, and the vision of Voldemort and Kronos appeared. The barriers between magical realms are indeed weakening, but with purpose and direction. Can you close the tear, Professor? Hermione asked. Not permanently, I fear. Such fundamental disruptions to magical reality require understanding the source. Dumbledore turned to Percy and Annabeth. Your protective measures were remarkably effective for improvisation. I suggest we reinforce them with additional enchantments and establish regular patrols of the area. What about the golden egg? Harry asked. The prophecy that appeared wasn't the normal clue for the second task, was it? Indeed not, Dumbledore confirmed. The eggs were enchanted to provide hints about the underwater challenge in the Black Lake, typically in the form of merpeoples singing, audible only beneath water. Percy's eyebrows shot up. Underwater task? Well, that's convenient. Perhaps too convenient, Annabeth mused, her analytical mind working. If someone manipulated the egg to show that prophecy instead. Then they're making sure Harry and Percy work together, Hermione concluded. Dumbledore nodded approvingly at their reasoning. I believe you should still attempt to decipher the original clue, Harry. The tournament must proceed as planned to avoid raising suspicion while we investigate these connections. So we're working two angles, Percy summarized. Tournament preparation and interdimensional mystery solving. Precisely, Mr. Jackson. Dumbledore's eyes regained some of their usual twinkle. Fortunately, you have assembled a rather formidable team for both endeavors. As they prepared to leave, Dumbledore added, one more thing. The Yule Ball approaches, a traditional part of the Triwizard Tournament. As a champion, Harry must attend with a partner. Perhaps all of you might participate. Such normal activities provide excellent cover for your investigations. Outside the office, Ron was waiting for them, anxiously shifting from foot to foot. Well? What happened? Did you find monsters? Is the world ending? Not immediately, Percy assured him with a half-smile. But we've got work to do. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm of training, research, and preparation. Mornings began with physical conditioning led by Percy and Annabeth, who introduced the Hogwarts trio to demigod workout regimens that left even Harry, conditioned by years of Quidditch, gasping for breath. Remind me why we're climbing ropes at 6 in the morning. Ron wheezed one particularly frigid December day, dangling precariously from a line they'd rigged in the room of requirement. Upper body strength, Annabeth called from the top of her rope, not even slightly winded. Critical for underwater mobility. And for not dying when something tries to drag you into the depths, Percy added cheerfully, racing Harry to the ceiling. Afternoons were split between classes and specialized training. Percy and Annabeth attended selected lessons with the fourth years, charms, defense against the dark arts, and care of magical creatures proving most relevant to their abilities. In return, They provided combat training and strategy sessions using the Room of Requirement's remarkable ability to transform into whatever they needed. Wider stance, Percy instructed, circling Harry as he practiced with a bronze training sword. You're still thinking like a seeker, fast but light. Against monsters, you need to be grounded, solid. Harry adjusted his footing, feeling the difference immediately as he parried Percy's next strike. Like this? Much better. Now, incorporate your wand movements into the sword patterns we practiced. Magic and metal together. In another corner of the room, Annabeth was drilling Hermione and Ron on battlefield assessment. Every environment has advantages and disadvantages, she explained, manipulating a three-dimensional map of the Black Lake. Wizards think in spells. Demigods think in terrain. Combine both mindsets and you become nearly unstoppable. Evenings were dedicated to research. The prophecy from the Golden Egg had spawned multiple investigation threads. Hermione tackled wizarding histories of interdimensional travel, Ron mapped mysterious occurrences around Hogwarts that might indicate new tiers, Annabeth delved into ancient texts about Hecate's blessing and its connection to wizardry, while Harry and Percy worked on decoding the original egg clue. This is hopeless, Harry groaned one evening, closing the egg after another ear-splitting shriek had driven everyone from their section of the library. It just screams at me. Screaming underwater, Percy mused. Sounds like, wait. He sat up straighter. Annabeth, what if it's not screaming but singing? Like, mermaid language? Annabeth's eyes widened. Of course. Merpeople's voices sound like screeching above water but are perfectly intelligible below. The prefect's bathroom has a pool-sized tub, Harry said, remembering Cedric's hint. We could test it there. That night, the five of them crowded into the luxurious bathroom, Percy looking particularly appreciative of the massive tub with its 100 golden taps. Nice setup, he said, running a hand through the multicolored bubbles. Way better than camp showers. Once the tub was filled, Harry submerged the egg and opened it underwater. Instead of shrieking, a chorus of eerie voices sang, "Come seek us where our voices sound, we cannot sing above the ground, and while you're searching ponder this, we've taken what you'll sorely miss, an hour long you'll have to look, and to recover what we took, but past an hour, the prospect's black, too late, it's gone, it won't come back. They're going to take something valuable from each champion," Hermione deduced immediately. "Something you'll sorely miss. And you'll have 1 hour to retrieve it from the bottom of the lake," Annabeth added. Percy, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly laughed. An underwater rescue mission? Seriously? That's the one task where being a son of Poseidon is basically cheating. For you, maybe, Harry pointed out. The rest of us can't breathe underwater or control currents. Then we'll find a way for you to, Percy said confidently. Between wizard spells, potions, and whatever demigod tricks we can adapt, we'll make you as comfortable underwater as I am. As they discussed potential approaches to the underwater task, none of them noticed the slight ripple in the bathwater, a subtle distortion that mirrored the tear they'd found in the forest. For a brief moment, the water seemed to listen, gathering their strategies and plans before settling back to normal. December brought snow to Hogwarts and a new challenge, the Yule Ball. While the impending tournament task and interdimensional crisis took priority in their minds, the social pressures of finding dates couldn't be ignored, especially for Harry, who as a champion was required to open the dancing. Just ask someone, Ron advised as they watched Percy and Annabeth spar in the Room of Requirement. Anyone. Says the person who hasn't asked anyone either, Harry retorted. Percy, overhearing as he dodged Annabeth's dagger strike, called out, "It's not that complicated, guys. Just be direct." "Easy for you to say," Ron grumbled. "You've already got a date." Percy and Annabeth exchanged amused glances. Their relationship, comfortable, supportive, yet intensely competitive, had become a source of fascination for many Hogwarts students. The way they anticipated each other's moves, whether in combat training or conversation, spoke to years of trust and shared experiences. What about Hermione? Annabeth suggested, sheathing her dagger. Has anyone asked her? Harry and Ron exchanged uncomfortable looks. The truth was, neither had thought of Hermione as a potential date until Victor Crumb had begun lingering in the library wherever she studied. I think Crumb's working up to it, Harry admitted. And you two are just going to let an international Quidditch star swoop in? Annabeth shook her head. You're hopeless. It's not like that, Ron protested, his ears reddening. Hermione's our friend, not a girl. Annabeth supplied with dangerous sweetness. Percy wisely changed the subject. Harry, have you considered asking Cho Chang? You stare at her every time we pass in the corridors. Harry's cheeks burned. Is it that obvious? To everyone except her, apparently, Percy confirmed. Later that day, emboldened by Percy's encouragement, Harry finally worked up the courage to ask Cho, only to discover she had already agreed to go with Cedric. Dejected, he retreated to the common room, where he found Annabeth and Hermione deep in research, surrounded by ancient texts. No luck with Cho? Hermione asked sympathetically when she saw his expression. She's going with Cedric, Harry confirmed miserably. I waited too long. Annabeth glanced up from a massive tome. There are other options, you know. Like, Harry. Ginny called from across the room, approaching with determination. Got a minute? Annabeth smiled knowingly and returned to her book as Ginny led Harry to a corner, speaking in an undertone. Listen, Neville asked me to the ball, and I said yes because I didn't think anyone else would, but, if you're looking for someone to go with, as friends, I could tell Neville. Oh, Harry said, caught off guard. That's really nice, Ginny, but I wouldn't want to mess up your plans with Neville. Ginny's face fell slightly before she rallied. Right. Of course. Well, if you hear of anyone looking for a partner, my friend Parvati doesn't have a date yet. Harry seized the suggestion gratefully. Actually, that might work out perfectly. Thanks, Ginny. By that evening, Harry had secured Parvati Patil as his date, and Ron, after being mercilessly teased by Percy for his lack of initiative, had reluctantly asked her twin sister Padma. Crisis averted, Percy announced as they gathered for their nightly strategy session. Now we can focus on the actual crises. Hermione rolled her eyes. The ball isn't for 2 more weeks. Plenty of time for new romantic disasters. Speaking of disasters, Annabeth said, spreading a map of Hogwarts on the table, we've located 3 more potential weak points between dimensions. She pointed to marked locations, the Ollery, the 7th floor corridor near the Room of Requirement, and the Quidditch pitch. They form a pattern, Hermione noted. A pentagram with the original tear as the central point. Percy frowned. That can't be coincidence. It's not, Harry agreed. Someone's deliberately creating these weaknesses in specific locations. The question is why. Annabeth tapped her finger thoughtfully against the map. And how are they connected to both Kronos and Voldemort? Ron, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. I think I know who might be involved. Or at least, someone who's acting suspicious. All eyes turned to him. Karkaroff, Ron said firmly. I've seen him prowling around the castle at odd hours, checking out these exact spots. He pointed to the marked locations. Thought he was just trying to cheat in the tournament somehow, but what if it's more than that? The former Death Eater, Harry murmured. Makes sense he might be involved if Voldemort is. But how would he connect to Kronos? Percy wondered. Karkaroff doesn't strike me as someone with knowledge of Greek gods. Unless he's working with someone else, Hermione suggested. Someone who does have that knowledge. We need to watch him, Annabeth decided. Track his movements, see who he meets with. The Marauder's map, Harry said immediately, pulling the magical parchment from his pocket. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. The map of Hogwarts materialized, showing hundreds of labeled dots moving throughout the castle. They quickly located Karkaroff stud in his quarters aboard the Durmstrang ship. "We'll take shifts monitoring him," Harry proposed. "And we should check those weak points, reinforce them like we did the first one." Percy nodded. "Tomorrow night. For now, let's keep working on underwater breathing solutions for the second task. Harry needs options besides relying on my powers, which might not work for him anyway." As they dispersed for the evening, Annabeth pulled Hermione aside. "I found something in Hogwarts, a history that might interest you," she said quietly, opening to a marked page. "Look at this passage about the founders." Hermione read aloud softly, "Godric Gryffindor's sword, goblin-made and imbued with powers beyond ordinary magical weapons, is said to come to the aid of any true Gryffindor in their hour of need. Some scholars believe the sword predates Gryffindor himself, possibly forged in the era when God still walked among wizards." She looked up, eyes wide. "You think Gryffindor's sword is connected to your world?" "The description sounds like celestial bronze," Annabeth confirmed. "And the way it appears when needed, that's not typical wizarding magic, is it?" "No," Hermione agreed, mind racing. "It's more like divine intervention." "Exactly. I think the sword might be a key to understanding how our worlds were originally connected, and possibly how to repair the damage being done now." Neither girl noticed a beetle perched on a nearby curtain, its antennae quivering with interest at their conversation. The following days brought new complications. Rita Skeeter published an article speculating about foreign influences at Hogwarts, specifically mentioning the mysterious American exchange students who had arrived under unusual circumstances. Though she didn't explicitly mention Percy and Annabeth's demigod nature, her hints about their unnatural abilities and connection to ancient powers came uncomfortably close to the truth. "How does she know all this?" Annabeth demanded, throwing down the newspaper at breakfast. "We've been careful about using our abilities in public. Rita Skeeter has ways of gathering information that defy explanation," Hermione said darkly. "I've been trying to figure out how she does it." Percy looked unconcerned. "People can think what they want. As long as she doesn't outright say, 'Hey, these kids are half god,' we're fine." "It's not just about exposure," Harry pointed out. "If she's watching us, she might interfere with our investigation or warn whoever's creating these dimensional tiers." The article had another unintended consequence: it drew the attention of ministry officials. That afternoon, Percy and Annabeth were summoned to Dumbledore's office to find Cornelius Fudge and two Aurors waiting alongside the headmaster. "Mr. Jackson, Miss Chase," Fudge said with forced cordiality. "I understand you've been participating in Hogwarts activities despite not being registered magical citizens of any country." "Minister," Dumbledore interjected smoothly, "as I explained in my letters, these young people are here under my personal supervision as part of an educational exchange." Yes, Fudge waved impatiently. "But the ministry must insist on proper documentation. Particularly in light of recent, unusual occurrences." Percy stepped forward. "What kind of occurrences, exactly?" One of the Aurors, a young woman with vibrant pink hair, answered, "Reports of unidentified magical creatures in Hogsmeade. Creatures that don't match any known classification." Percy and Annabeth exchanged alarmed glances. "More monsters crossing over." "We're happy to help however we can," Annabeth said diplomatically. "But our presence here is temporary. We'll be returning to America once our exchange is complete." "Nevertheless," Fudge insisted, "you must register with the Department of International Magical Cooperation. And submit to examination of your wands." "That might be difficult," Percy admitted. "I only recently started using a wand. Before that, my magic manifested differently." The Aurors tensed slightly at this admission, but Dumbledore intervened again. "The American magical tradition embraces wandless techniques far more than European schools, Minister. Surely we can accommodate such cultural differences." After much bureaucratic wrangling, a compromise was reached. Percy and Annabeth would register as temporary magical visitors but would not be required to demonstrate standard wizarding abilities. In exchange, they agreed to assist the Aurors if more unusual creatures appeared. That was tense, Percy commented after Fudge and his entourage departed. Are all wizard politicians that paranoid? Cornelius is particularly susceptible to fears regarding his authority, Dumbledore sighed. However, his visit serves as a warning, our activities are drawing attention. We must proceed with greater caution. The monsters in Hogsmeade concern me more, Annabeth said. If they're appearing beyond Hogwarts grounds. Then the dimensional tiers are spreading, Dumbledore finished gravely. All the more reason to accelerate your investigation. That night, Harry led their expedition to check the newly identified weak points. The Olori proved relatively stable, showing only minor magical fluctuations that Hermione and Annabeth reinforced with combined protective spells. The Quidditch pitch, however, was more concerning. This is bad, Percy murmured, staring at the shimmering distortion hovering 10 feet above the center of the field. Much worse than the forest tear. The air rippled like heat waves, occasionally showing brief glimpses of another place, a barren landscape with black rocks and sulphurous yellow fog. That's not Camp Half-Blood, Annabeth said tensely. That looks like the outer edges of Tartarus. Definitely not somewhere we want connecting to Hogwarts, Percy agreed, drawing Riptide. How do we contain this one? Before anyone could respond, a deep growl emanated from the rippling air. Two glowing red eyes appeared in the distortion, followed by a massive paw tipped with razor-sharp claws that seemed to test the boundary between worlds. Hellhound, Percy identified immediately. Big one too. Can it get through? Ron asked, his voice higher than usual. Not yet, but it's trying. Percy turned to Annabeth. Quickseal protocol. She nodded grimly. Harry, Hermione, Ron, we need a containment circle. Any boundary spell you know, cast it in a ring around this area. The three wizards spread out, wands raised, casting protective enchantments while Percy and Annabeth prepared what looked like bronze dust mixed with water from Percy's canteen. Salt water infused with crushed celestial bronze, Annabeth explained as she worked. Temporary barrier against underworld creatures. The hellhound's paw pushed further through the tear, followed by a snout the size of a small car. Its growl vibrated the air around them. Hurry, Harry called, maintaining his section of the containment spell. Percy and Annabeth completed their mixture and began flinging it in an arc around the tear, chanting in ancient Greek. Where the mixture landed, blue-green light blazed up, forming a shimmering dome. The hellhound recoiled with a yelp, withdrawing back through the distortion. It worked! Ron exclaimed. Temporarily, Annabeth cautioned, already scribbling notes. This tier is different from the others, it's connected directly to the underworld, not to our normal world. Which means Kronos is expanding his reach, Percy said grimly. He's not just trying to connect our worlds, he's bringing in forces from Tartarus too. Harry studied the now contained tier with growing concern. If Voldemort gains access to these creatures, then the wizarding world faces threats it has no idea how to fight, Hermione finished. We need to find who's creating these tiers and stop them before, a sudden commotion from the castle interrupted her. Shouts and flashes of light erupted from near the Beauxbatons carriage, followed by screams. Something's attacking. Harry took off running, the others close behind. They arrived to find chaos, several Beauxbatons students backing away from what appeared to be women with flaming hair and mismatched legs, one bronze, one donkey-like. Empowsi, Percy groaned, uncapping Riptide. Because tonight wasn't complicated enough already. The vampire-like demons hissed at Percy's celestial bronze sword, revealing fangs. Demigods, one spat. The master said you'd be here. Master? Annabeth demanded, her dagger at ready. You mean Kronos? The Empowsa smiled cruelly. The Lord of Time sends his regards. He's quite eager to meet your wizard friends. Harry raised his wand. Stupefy. The stunning spell hit the Empowsa but merely staggered her. She laughed. Your stick magic is weak, lightning boy. Percy launched himself at the creatures, riptide slashing through the air. The impausi were fast, but Percy had clearly fought their kind before, anticipating their movements and countering with practiced efficiency. Water, he shouted to Harry. Use water spells. Harry changed tactics immediately. Aguamenti. A jet of water erupted from his wand, striking an impausa and causing her to shriek as if burned. The spell itself isn't hurting her, Annabeth called, dodging a swipe from Bron's claws. It's the intent behind it. Your magic responds to your will. Understanding dawned on Harry. He focused intently on the water jet, imagining it not just as ordinary water but as something purifying, cleansing, sacred. The water's appearance didn't change, but the impausa's reaction did. Where the stream touched her skin, she smoked and blistered. That's it. Percy approved, dispatching another impausa with a clean strike. Hermione, Ron, try blessing or purifying spells. The fight intensified as more Hogwarts teachers arrived, including McGonagall and Flitwick, who watched in shock as their standard combat spells proved minimally effective against the demons. Target the bronze leg. Percy instructed the professors. Or use fire, they hate fire. Flitwick quickly adapted, conjuring blue flames that corralled an impausa into Percy's striking range. Working together, wizards and demigods gradually gained the upper hand until only one impausa remained, the one who had spoken of Kronos. Percy held Riptide to her throat. Who opened the tears between worlds? How is Kronos connecting to this place? The impausa smiled despite her precarious position. The child of magic walks both worlds already. The Lord merely enhanced existing pathways. Child of magic? Annabeth pressed. You mean a demigod? A child of Hecate? The demon's eyes gleamed with malicious amusement. Pieces already on the board, moving toward endgame. Your wizard friends should check their bloodlines more carefully. Before Percy could extract more information, the impausa dissolved into flames, leaving nothing but a scorch mark on the grass. In the aftermath, Madame Maxime demanded explanations while Dumbledore attempted to calm the situation. The Beauxbatons students were led back to their carriage, many still shaking from the encounter. We can't keep this quiet anymore, Harry said as they regrouped. The whole school just saw monsters from your world attacking. And saw that regular spells barely affected them, Hermione added worriedly. Percy sheathed Riptide, looking troubled. That impausa mentioned a child of magic, who walks both worlds. Someone who's already here, already involved. A half-blood, Annabeth murmured. But half-blood could mean either demigod or wizard with mixed parentage. Like me, Harry said. Half-blood wizard. Or a literal child of Hecate, goddess of magic and crossroads, Percy suggested. Someone who would naturally connect to wizarding magic. Ron, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. What about Professor Moody? He's new this year, knows way more about dark stuff than normal, and he's always hanging around during weird events. Mad-Eye. Harry frowned. He's an Auror. Dumbledore trusts him. Doesn't mean he can't be a demigod, Percy pointed out. Most don't know their divine parentage until they're claimed. Annabeth looked thoughtful. It's worth investigating. But right now, we need to finish checking those weak points before more monsters cross over. The attack forced Dumbledore to address the school at breakfast the next morning. He explained the creatures as magical beings from another realm without specifying their demigod connections, and announced increased security measures, including teacher patrols and restricted access to grounds after dark. For Percy and Annabeth, the revelation of their world brought both relief and new challenges. No longer needing to hide their abilities completely, they could more openly assist with security, but they also faced endless questions from curious students and suspicious staff. Is it true you can talk to horses? Can you really control water without a wand? Are there really Greek gods? Like, actually real? Percy handled the attention with good-natured deflection, while Annabeth provided carefully edited explanations that satisfied curiosity without revealing too much. Meanwhile, their investigation continued with renewed urgency. The final weak point near the room of requirement proved the most puzzling. Unlike the others, it showed no signs of monster activity or dimensional thinning. Instead, they found strange runes carved into the wall, combining Greek letters with what Hermione identified as ancient Nordic symbols. "These are activation marks," Annabeth said, tracing the carvings with her finger. "They're not creating a tier yet, they're preparing for one. A big one. Can we disable them?" Harry asked. Annabeth shook her head. "Not without understanding their purpose first. They're too complex to simply erase, might trigger whatever they're designed to do." "So someone's setting up for a major event," Percy concluded. "Multiple smaller tiers leading to a big one." The third task, Harry realized suddenly. It has to be. Whatever they're planning will happen during the maze. Their theory gained support that evening when Harry returned from a summoning to Dumbledore's office. Bagman told Dumbledore the third task will be a magical maze filled with obstacles and creatures, he reported. "Perfect cover for dimensional chaos. And perfect timing," Hermione added. "The tasks are spaced months apart. The third won't be until June, plenty of time to strengthen these connections." "Then we have two priorities," Annabeth decided, sketching a quick timeline. "First, get Harry through the second task safely. Then use the time between tasks to identify who's creating these tiers and stop them before the third task." Percy nodded in agreement. "We should also step up monster containment training. If Hogwarts is going to face Greek threats, everyone needs to know how to defend themselves." And so, in addition to their preparations for the underwater challenge, they began organizing secret defense sessions for trusted students. The room of requirement transformed into a training ground where select members of different houses gathered to learn combined magical techniques. "The key is intent," Percy explained to the small group, which included Ginny Weasley, Neville Longbottom, Luna Lovegood, and a handful of others who had witnessed the Impausa attack. "Your spells have the same foundation as our abilities, belief and purpose directed through a medium, whether wand or natural gift. Focus on elemental magic," Annabeth added. "Fire, water, earth, air, these connect most directly to divine powers and affect monsters more effectively than abstract spells." Harry demonstrated, combining Aguamenti with Percy's teachings about sacred water to create a spray that would damage underworld creatures. Hermione showed how transfiguration could temporarily bind monsters, even if it couldn't destroy them. "Remember," Percy cautioned as they practiced, "most monsters can only be truly destroyed by celestial bronze, imperial gold, or similar divine materials. Your goal is containment and defense until someone with the right weapons can finish the job." Luna, who had accepted the existence of Greek gods with unsurprising equanimity, asked, "Could we bless our own weapons? If divine power is about belief and intent?" Annabeth looked intrigued. "That's, actually a fascinating question. In theory, concentrated belief channeled through the right ritual might imbue regular objects with some divine properties. Like Gryffindor's sword appearing for true need," Neville suggested quietly. "Exactly," Annabeth nodded approvingly. "Let's research that possibility." As January progressed, their efforts developed on multiple fronts. The Yule Ball came and went, a brief respite of normalcy where they danced, laughed, and pretended for one evening that interdimensional invasion wasn't imminent. Harry and Parvati managed a decent opening dance, Ron sulked when Hermione appeared with Viktor Krum, and Percy and Annabeth stole the show with moves clearly practiced from previous formal events at camp. The underwater task preparation intensified as February approached. After exploring multiple options, including gillyweed, bubblehead charms, and partial transfiguration, they settled on a combined approach, gillyweed for Harry's breathing, supplemented by Percy's water manipulation to assist with navigation and potential threats. "I won't be able to use my powers fully for myself if I'm helping you," Percy warned during a practice session in the lake's shallows. So you need to be self-sufficient for basic survival. Harry, currently sporting half-formed gills from a small gillyweed sample, nodded underwater. They had discovered that while Percy couldn't grant Harry water-breathing abilities directly, he could enhance the gillyweed's effects and create currents to assist movement. What about the thing I'll sorely miss? Harry asked after surfacing. Any guesses what they'll take? Something personal, Hermione suggested from the shore, where she monitored their practice with Annabeth. Your broomstick, perhaps? Ron, who was practicing underwater stunning spells nearby, suggested, or a person. They wouldn't actually put people underwater, would they? The possibility hung uncomfortably in the air. Percy and Annabeth exchanged glances, both familiar with quests where friends became leverage. If it is people, Percy said seriously, we need contingencies. I can keep someone safe underwater for quite a while, but the spell specifically mentioned too late, it's gone, after an hour. Let's assume worst-case scenario, Annabeth decided practically. Prepare as if they'll take hostages, and be pleasantly surprised if it's just objects. As they refined their approach, Annabeth continued investigating the Child of Magic reference. She cross-referenced Hogwarts staff and students with patterns of activity around the dimensional tiers, creating complex charts that covered the wall of their practice room. Someone with access to restricted areas, she muttered one evening, staring at her work. Knowledge of both Greek and wizarding magic. Present during key events. The list of suspects remained frustratingly long, Karkaroff with his dark mark and suspicious movements, Moody with his unexplained knowledge, even Bagman with his tournament access and gambling debts that might make him vulnerable to manipulation. We're missing something, Annabeth admitted finally. Some connection we can't see yet. Maybe we need to look at bloodlines more carefully, like the Impausa suggested, Hermione proposed. If someone has literal divine heritage without knowing it. The theory warranted investigation, but wizard genealogy proved notoriously difficult to research, with pureblood families guarding their records jealously and many half-blood lines poorly documented. Meanwhile, monitoring of the existing tiers showed troubling developments. The Black Lake, previously untouched, began showing signs of dimensional thinning, particularly worrying given the approaching second task. Sightings of unusual creatures increased, though the combined patrol efforts managed to contain most before they reached the castle. February arrived with biting winds and increased tension. 3 days before the second task, Percy and Harry conducted a final practice session in the lake, unaware that beneath its dark surface, something watched their movements with cold calculation. Just stay calm and remember the plan, Percy advised as they stood at the lake's edge on the morning of the second task. Around them, stands had been erected for spectators, who now huddled against the February chill, breath fogging in the winter air. Harry nodded, clutching the gillyweed Dobby had procured for their training. Where are Ron and Hermione? I haven't seen them since last night. Percy and Annabeth exchanged concerned glances. We haven't either, Annabeth admitted. Which supports our hostage theory. Great, Harry muttered. Nothing like rescuing your friends from mere people to start the day. Ludo Bagman's magically amplified voice boomed across the lake, welcome to the second task. Last night, something was stolen from each of our champions. They have precisely 1 hour to recover what has been taken from them. On my whistle, champions. Harry quickly stuffed the gillyweed into his mouth, grimacing at the slimy texture, while Percy centered himself, feeling the familiar tug of the water calling to him. When Bagman's whistle sounded, they dove together into the frigid lake. The transformation hit Harry immediately, gills erupting from his neck, hands and feet elongating into flipper-like appendages. Percy, meanwhile, remained perfectly dry inside his self-contained bubble of air, his movements natural and powerful in his father's domain. Can you hear me? Percy's voice carried clearly underwater, another benefit of his heritage. Harry nodded, surprised to find he could understand Percy perfectly despite being underwater. I'll scout ahead, identify threats, Percy instructed. Follow the current I create, it'll lead you toward the Mere People village. Remember, I can help with navigation and minor threats, but retrieving your hostage is your challenge alone." Harry gave a thumbs up, and Percy shot forward with impressive speed, leaving a gentle current in his wake that Harry followed. The water around them seemed darker than during their practice sessions, the visibility poorer despite Percy's efforts to clear their path. 20 minutes into their journey, Harry noticed Percy had stopped ahead, hovering at the edge of a kelp forest. As Harry caught up, he saw why. A massive creature with multiple heads circled the perimeter of the weeds, its serpentine body at least 30 feet long. "Scylla," Percy said grimly. "Shouldn't be here, they're saltwater monsters." The creature turned multiple pairs of glowing eyes in their direction, apparently sensing their presence despite Percy's attempts to mask their approach. Change of plans, Percy decided quickly. This thing is beyond tournament-level challenge, someone planted it here specifically. I'll distract it, you circle around through the kelp. Stay close to the bottom where it can't easily follow. Before Harry could protest, Percy darted forward, drawing Riptide and calling out to the monster in what sounded like a mixture of Greek and hissing sounds. The Scylla immediately focused on Percy, multiple heads snapping in his direction as he led it away from Harry's position. Harry dove into the kelp forest as instructed, swimming close to the lake bed. The thick weeds reduced visibility further, and something about them felt wrong, an unnatural coldness that reminded him uncomfortably of dementors. As he pushed through, small fish fled from his path, their movements panicked and erratic. Halfway through the kelp, Harry's scar suddenly burned with searing pain. He clutched his forehead, momentarily disoriented, and in that moment of vulnerability, the water around him seemed to darken further, taking on an oily, almost solid quality. A voice whispered from the darkness, not through his ears but directly into his mind, "Harry Potter, the boy who lived, how interesting to finally meet you." The voice was ancient and cold, carrying none of the high-pitched quality of Voldemort's, yet somehow more terrifying in its age and power. Harry forced himself forward, trying to ignore both the pain and the voice, but the water thickened around him, slowing his movements. "Your world and ours are more connected than you realize," the voice continued. "The wizard who calls himself Voldemort is merely a shadow of true immortal power. But he learns quickly, as do I." With tremendous effort, Harry pulled himself through the restrictive water, remembering Percy's training. He focused on his intent, channeling his magic through his entire body rather than just his wand. The water around him responded, reluctantly loosening its grip. "Impressive," the voice acknowledged. "The demigod has taught you well. But time flows differently for me, Harry Potter. I have patience you cannot comprehend." The presence faded as Harry burst free from the kelp forest, gasping despite his gills. Ahead, he could see stone structures rising from the lake bed, the Mere People village. And beyond it, Percy battling the Scylla with impressive coordination of sword and water manipulation. Harry pressed on toward the village, where he found 4 figures tied to a stone statue in the central square: Hermione, Ron, Cho Chang, and a young girl who resembled Fleur Delacour. Mere People with grayish skin and yellow eyes circled the hostages, carrying spears and watching Harry with suspicious expressions. A quick check confirmed his fears: all 4 hostages appeared to be in an enchanted sleep, unable to help themselves. He noticed Cedric had already retrieved Cho, and Crumb, partially transfigured into a shark, was working on freeing Hermione. Harry moved toward Ron, but hesitated when he saw no sign of Fleur. The young girl, clearly Fleur's sister, remained unattended. After a moment's deliberation, Harry took out his knife and cut both Ron and the little girl free, gesturing to the Mere People that he was taking both. The Mere People initially protested but fell silent and a tremendous crash echoed through the water. Harry turned to see Percy driving the Scylla back from the village, the water around him swirling with such force that it created a momentary whirlpool. "Go!" Percy shouted, noticing Harry with the hostages. "I'll hold it here. Get them to the surface." Harry hesitated, unwilling to leave Percy alone against the monster, but the weight of responsibility for 2 unconscious hostages made the decision for him. With a powerful kick, he began ascending, pulling Ron and Fleur's sister toward the surface. The journey up proved more difficult than expected. The water's unnatural darkness persisted, and Harry's gillyweed effects were beginning to fade. His lungs burned as gills receded, and the hostages seemed to grow heavier with each foot of ascent. 50 feet from the surface, Harry felt his transformation reverse completely. Panic threatened to overwhelm him as water filled his mouth, but suddenly a surge of force pushed him upward. Percy, still fighting below, had created a current to launch them toward the surface. They broke into open air with a tremendous splash, Ron and Fleur's sister immediately waking from their enchanted sleep. The crowd roared as Harry gasped for breath, helping the disoriented hostages stay afloat. "Percy?" Ron sputtered, looking around. "Where's Percy?" Harry turned back toward the dark water, fear gripping him. "Still down there. Fighting a sea monster." Before he could consider diving back down, the lake's surface bulged upward, and Percy erupted into the air atop a 20-foot water spout, landing neatly on the platform where the judges sat. The crowd exploded with cheers and gasps at the spectacular display. "Show off," Ron muttered, though he looked relieved. As they were helped onto the platform, wrapped in warm towels, Harry pulled Percy aside. "Something spoke to me down there. In the kelp." Percy's expression darkened. "What did it say?" "It knew me by name. Said something about Voldemort being a shadow of true immortal power. And about learning from each other." "Kronos," Percy confirmed grimly. "The Lord of Time himself. He's making direct contact now." Dumbledore approached before they could discuss further, his usual twinkle absent from his blue eyes. "Mr. Potter, Mr. Jackson. The judges are quite impressed with your performance, though somewhat concerned by the unexpected complications. The Scylla wasn't part of the task, was it?" Percy asked directly. "Indeed not," Dumbledore confirmed. "Nor was the unusual darkness that several champions reported. It seems our interdimensional visitors are escalating their interventions." The judging proceeded with Fleur receiving partial points for her attempt, Cedric and Crumb scored for their successful rescues, and Harry awarded high marks for retrieving 2 hostages despite being well under the time limit. Percy, not being an official champion, received no score but considerable applause for his battle with the Scylla. As the crowds dispersed, heading back to the castle for warm food and celebration, the core group lingered by the lake shore, processing the implications of what had happened. Kronos spoke directly to Harry, Percy explained to the others. "And that Scylla was deliberately placed to interfere with the task. The barriers between worlds are weakening faster than we thought," Annabeth said worriedly. "Direct communication, monsters crossing over without portals. And I think I saw something else down there," Harry added. "In the darkness. Like shadows moving with purpose." Percy and Annabeth exchanged alarmed glances. "Shades," Annabeth said. "Spirits of the dead. If those are crossing over too. Then we're facing a full-scale underworld incursion," Percy finished. "Not just monsters, but forces directly from Hades' realm. Combined with whatever Voldemort's planning," Hermione added, still shivering despite her towels, "we could be looking at a convergence of the darkest elements of both worlds." Ron summarized their situation with characteristic bluntness. "We're completely screwed, aren't we?" "Not completely," Annabeth corrected, her strategic mind already working. "We have months until the 3rd task. Time to identify who's creating these connections and stop them. And to prepare Hogwarts for whatever comes through if we fail," Percy added. "We need to expand our training program, get more students and staff involved." Harry nodded in agreement, his resolve hardening. "Dumbledore will help. After today, he can't deny the threat." As they headed back to the castle, discussing plans for intensified research and training, none of them noticed the beetle that had been listening from a nearby reed, or the small figure watching from the forest edge, a figure whose magical eye swiveled independently, tracking their movements with unnatural focus. The aftermath of the second task brought significant changes to Hogwarts. Dumbledore, recognizing the escalating threat, authorized Percy and Annabeth to establish formal, interdimensional defense sessions for upper-year students. Professor Moody incorporated Greek monster lore into his defense against the dark arts curriculum, showing particular interest in Percy's demonstrations of effective combat techniques. Constant vigilance applies to all threats, Moody growled during one combined session, his magical eye fixed on Percy as the demigod demonstrated sword techniques. Wizard, monster, or muggle, know how to defeat anything that comes at you. February melted into March, bringing milder weather but growing tension. The dimensional tiers stabilized temporarily, though regular patrols continued to monitor their condition. Harry, now leading in the tournament standings, faced increased attention from all quarters, some supportive, others suspicious. Rita Skeeter published more articles hinting at dangerous alliances forming at Hogwarts, though Hermione's ongoing investigation into Skeeter's information-gathering methods began bearing fruit. "I've narrowed it down," she announced one evening in the Room of Requirement, where they had gathered for strategic planning. "She's using some form of magical surveillance, probably an animagus transformation. Something small, inconspicuous. Like a bug on the wall." Percy suggested. "That's how I'd do it." Hermione's eyes widened. "A beetle. I've seen the same beetle repeatedly during conversations that later appeared in her articles." "Set a trap," Annabeth advised. "Feed false information when you notice the beetle, then monitor publications to confirm." While Hermione pursued her Skeeter investigation, Harry and Ron focused on identifying the child of magic mentioned by the Impausa. They compiled a list of everyone at Hogwarts with unusual magical abilities or suspicious behavior patterns. "Moody's still at the top of my list," Ron insisted. "Have you noticed how he always asks Percy about monster vulnerabilities? Specific details about fighting techniques?" "That could just be professional interest," Harry countered. "He is teaching defense against the dark arts. Or he's gathering intelligence for someone else," Percy suggested. "Remember, we're looking for someone connected to both Kronos and Voldemort." Their investigation hit a breakthrough when Luna Lovegood, now a regular attendee at their defense sessions, approached with an observation. "I've been watching Professor Moody like you asked," she said in her dreamy voice. "His magical eye sees through dimensional barriers." "What?" Harry, Percy, and Annabeth asked simultaneously. "When we were practicing by that thin spot near the Olary, his eye kept focusing on something beyond our reality. And he was muttering incantations, not in Latin like normal spells, but something older." This information catalyzed a more focused investigation. They began tracking Moody's movements meticulously using the Marauder's map, noting that he frequently visited the weak points during late hours. But why would an Auror who spent his life fighting dark wizards help Voldemort? Hermione questioned. "It doesn't make sense. Unless he's not who he appears to be," Annabeth suggested. "Or he's being controlled somehow." The possibility required verification before they could approach Dumbledore with their suspicions. Percy proposed a test. "Greek magic has specific reactions to divine heritage," he explained. "If Moody is indeed this child of magic, possibly a child of Hecate, he'll respond differently to certain stimuli than a regular wizard would." They crafted a plan to expose Moody to celestial bronze during their next defense lesson, watching for any unusual reaction. Percy would accidentally leave Riptide where Moody would naturally pick it up. The sword's response to his touch would be revealing. The opportunity came during a combined practical session where Percy demonstrated monster fighting techniques while Moody taught counter curses. As planned, Percy left Riptide on a desk while helping a student with stance correction. Moody, prowling the room as usual, approached the sword with apparent casual interest. "Fascinating weapon, Jackson," he commented, reaching for the hilt. "Celestial bronze, you called it?" The moment his fingers touched the sword, two significant things happened. Riptide glowed with an intense blue-green light, and Moody jerked his hand back as if burned, a flash of something, rage? Fear? Recognition, crossing his scarred face before his usual gruff expression returned. Interesting reaction, he muttered, flexing his fingers. Magic recognition between compatible forms, perhaps. Percy exchanged meaningful glances with Harry and Annabeth. The test had confirmed something unusual about Moody's magical nature, but raised more questions than it answered. After class, they regrouped to analyze what they'd witnessed. Celestial bronze doesn't burn regular mortals, they can't even properly see or feel it, Annabeth explained. For wizards, there's minor interaction due to Hecate's blessing on magical bloodlines. But what we saw was the reaction of someone with direct divine heritage, Percy finished. Stronger than a typical wizard, but not like a demigod either. Something different. So Moody is the child of magic? Harry asked. Or whoever is pretending to be Moody, Hermione suggested suddenly. What if he's being impersonated? That would explain the inconsistencies in his behavior. The theory gained traction as they reviewed their observations, Moody's flask that he drank from hourly, his occasionally erratic knowledge of Auror protocols, the convenient timing of his appointment at Hogwarts. Polyjuice potion, Harry realized. Someone's using Polyjuice to impersonate the real Moody. And that someone has connections to both Voldemort and Kronos, Annabeth concluded. The perfect position to manipulate the tournament and create dimensional tiers while maintaining access to Hogwarts. They took their evidence to Dumbledore that evening, presenting their observations and theory. The headmaster listened gravely, asking pointed questions about Moody's reactions to celestial bronze and his movements around the dimensional weak points. Your reasoning is sound, he acknowledged finally. And explains certain irregularities I had noticed myself. However, confronting an impostor directly could drive them to desperate action, particularly if they are working for both Lord Voldemort and this Titan Lord. So what do we do? Harry asked. Just let him continue whatever he's planning. Not at all, Dumbledore's eyes regained some of their familiar twinkle. We feed him carefully selected information, allow him to believe his plan is proceeding undetected while we prepare our countermeasures. A double bluff, Percy nodded appreciatively. Let him think we're clueless while we're actually setting a trap. Precisely, Mr. Jackson. Meanwhile, we must locate the real Alastair Moody. If our impostor is using Polyjuice potion, he requires continuous access to his subject. He's keeping the real Moody prisoner somewhere in the castle, Hermione deduced. Somewhere private but accessible. Moody's office and quarters, Harry suggested. No one would question the defense professor spending time there. Dumbledore nodded. I will arrange a discreet search when our impostor is otherwise occupied. Until then, continue your training and research, but be cautious about what information you reveal in his presence. The following weeks brought a new dimension to their efforts. While maintaining the appearance of normal preparation for the third task, they quietly expanded their monster defense training, focusing particularly on combined magical techniques that would be effective against both wizard and Greek threats. Percy and Annabeth worked with Professor Flitwick to develop charm variations that could affect underworld creatures, while Harry and Ron coordinated with the twins to create strategic diversions and emergency response systems. Hermione and Luna continued researching the connection between Greek divine magic and wizarding abilities, looking for exploitable overlaps. April arrived with unexpected reinforcements. During breakfast one morning, a school owl delivered a small package to Percy containing a bronze disc inscribed with Greek symbols and a note in familiar handwriting, Iris message disc. One-time use. Activated, 8 p.m. tonight. Chiron, that evening, they gathered in the room of requirement, which had configured itself into a space with a fountain illuminated by prismatic light, perfect for Iris messaging. At precisely 8 o'clock, Percy activated the disc, tossing it into the fountain where it dissolved in a shower of golden sparks. The mist above the water shimmered, forming into an image of Chiron in the big house at Camp Half-Blood. Beside him stood a serious-looking girl with red hair, Rachel Elizabeth Dare, the Oracle, and a pale boy in black clothing that Harry immediately recognized as Nico D'Angelo from Percy's descriptions. "Percy, Annabeth," Chiron greeted, relief evident in his voice. "We've been extremely concerned. The barriers between worlds grow thinner daily." "We've noticed," Percy replied dryly. "Monsters crossing over, communication from Kronos himself, it's getting complicated here." "It's happening on our end too," Rachel said, her green eyes intense. "I've had visions of a skull-faced man rising from a cauldron, surrounded by hooded figures. And a maze that shifts between Greek and wizard magic. Voldemort's rebirth ritual," Harry realized with a chill. "And the third task maze. The Oracle gave another prophecy," Chiron explained grimly. "One that directly addresses your current situation." Rachel's eyes glowed with an eerie green light as she recited, "The Serpent Lord and Titan King shall rise as one, when worlds collide beneath the setting sun. Sea and lightning must stand as one against the tide, while death's own sun makes the final divide. What once was separated by divine decree, shall find its balance in unity or cease to be." The prophecy hung in the air as Rachel's eyes returned to normal. Nico stepped forward, speaking for the first time. "That's why I'm here," he said, his voice solemn. "As a son of Hades, I can travel between realms more easily than most. I've been tracking the underworld disturbances, and they all connect to your location. Can you cross over?" Annabeth asked urgently. "We could use your expertise, especially if we're facing underworld forces." Nico exchanged glances with Chiron. "I'm going to try. The next convergence point happens during your new moon, 3 days from now. I should be able to shadow travel through the barrier then." "Be careful," Percy warned. "These tiers are unstable, and something tells me whoever's creating them isn't planning a smooth crossing for allies." "Noted," Nico replied with the ghost of a smile. "But dealing with dangerous crossings is kind of my specialty." Chiron provided additional information about similar incidents in demigod history, rare occasions when the magical and divine worlds had overlapped, usually with catastrophic consequences. The pattern always involved a catalyst, someone with connections to both worlds who deliberately weakened the barriers. "Your imposter is likely this catalyst," Chiron concluded. "Possibly a legacy case, a descendant of Hecate who later became a wizard, maintaining connections to both magical traditions. Which would explain their ability to manipulate both types of power," Hermione mused. "And why celestial bronze affected them." As the iris message began to fade, Chiron offered a final warning: "The final task of your tournament will be the culmination of whatever plan is in motion. Prepare thoroughly, trust each other, and remember, some boundaries exist for good reason. Not all magic is meant to combine." With that cryptic advice, the connection dissolved, leaving them with more information but equally pressing concerns. 3 days until Nico attempts to cross over, Percy summarized. "Meanwhile, we continue monitoring Fake Moody while preparing for the maze." Harry nodded, his mind still processing the new prophecy. "Sea and lightning must stand as one against the tide, that's clearly us," he said, gesturing between himself and Percy. "But what's this about Death's Son making the final divide?" "Nico," Annabeth explained. "As a child of Hades, he has unique abilities regarding boundaries, particularly those between life and death, but potentially between worlds too." "And the Serpent Lord and Titan King rising as one?" Ron asked nervously. No one needed to answer. The image of Voldemort and Kronos somehow merging their powers hung over them like a shadow, a possibility too terrifying to fully contemplate. The new moon arrived with unsettling atmospheric changes. The sky above Hogwarts took on a strange purplish hue at sunset, and magical instruments throughout the castle behaved erratically. Peeves the poltergeist disappeared entirely, apparently sensing danger even ghosts feared, while the castle's enchanted portraits reported disorientation and momentary glimpses of somewhere else in their backgrounds. Percy, Annabeth, Harry, Ron, and Hermione gathered near the original tear in the Forbidden Forest, where Nico had indicated he would attempt his crossing. Dumbledore joined them, having been fully briefed on the expected arrival. The dimensional boundaries are particularly fluid tonight, the headmaster observed, studying the rippling air above the small pond. I can feel the magic fluctuating. Percy nodded, unusually tense. Nico's powerful, but crossing between worlds is extreme even for him. If something goes wrong, we'll be ready to assist, Dumbledore assured him. I've brought certain artifacts that may help stabilize the crossing. As the final light faded from the sky, the air around the pond began to darken unnaturally. Shadows stretched and deepened, gathering toward the center of the clearing like liquid pooling from all directions. It's starting, Annabeth whispered. The collected shadows suddenly surged upward, forming a swirling vortex about 7 feet tall. Through its dark center, they glimpsed flashes of another place, rocky terrain, sulphurous air, and a lone figure pushing through as if swimming against a powerful current. Nico! Percy called. We see you. Keep coming. The shadowy form struggled visibly, occasionally jerked backward by unseen forces. Harry raised his wand, uncertain how to help but ready to try. Something's fighting his crossing, Annabeth observed tensely. Something doesn't want him here. Dumbledore stepped forward, pulling an ancient-looking amulet from his robes. Perhaps this might assist, he murmured, holding the object toward the vortex. The amulet glowed with silver light, and the shadows seemed to stabilize momentarily. Taking advantage of the temporary stability, Nico made a final push, his figure becoming more distinct as he neared their side of the barrier. With a sound like tearing fabric, he burst through, stumbling forward and collapsing onto the forest floor. Percy immediately rushed to his side, helping the pale boy to his feet. Nico looked even more ghostly than usual, his olive skin ashen, dark circles prominent beneath his eyes. That, he gasped, was not a normal shadow travel. Something tried to redirect me. Something powerful. Kronos? Percy asked. Nico shook his head. Different. Colder. More, fractured. He looked up, noticing Dumbledore. You must be the wizard headmaster. Your school has a death problem. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. Indeed. In what sense, Mr. D'Angelo? Something here has cheated death repeatedly, Nico explained, still leaning on Percy for support. It's created distortions in the underworld, pathways that shouldn't exist. My father is displeased. Voldemort, Harry said grimly. He's created Horcruxes, objects containing pieces of his soul. That's how he survived when his killing curse rebounded from me. Nico's dark eyes fixed on Harry with new interest. You've survived death too. I can sense it on you, a touch of the underworld. Before they could discuss further, the shadow vortex behind them pulsed violently. Tendrils of darkness whipped outward, grasping at the nearest figures. It's collapsing. Annabeth shouted. Everyone back. They retreated hastily as the vortex imploded, releasing a shock wave that knocked them off their feet. In its place remained a tear twice the size of the original, a gaping wound between worlds that showed disturbing glimpses of the underworld beyond. That's not good, Nico stated flatly, staring at the enlarged tear. Someone piggybacked on my crossing, used my path to force the barrier wider. Can you close it? Dumbledore asked, regaining his feet with surprising agility for his age. Nico studied the tear, walking its perimeter with growing concern. Not completely. It's been deliberately anchored from both sides. He placed a hand near the distortion, fingers tracing symbols invisible to the others. These are binding marks, underworld Greek mixed with something else. Nordic runes, maybe. The same combination we found by the Room of Requirement, Hermione noted. Whoever's creating these tiers is consistent in their methods. And expanding their work, Annabeth added grimly. This tier is connected to others, I can feel the magical resonance. Nico confirmed her assessment. They're creating a network. When activated simultaneously, they'll form a major convergence point, large enough for something significant to cross over. Or someone, Harry suggested. Voldemort's physical form, perhaps. Or Kronos. Both, if that prophecy is accurate, Percy said. But why wait? Why the elaborate setup with the tournament? Power, Nico answered simply. Magical events create energy. 3 tasks involving champions, danger, spectators focusing their attention and emotions, that's significant magical fuel. And the maze will be the final catalyst, Dumbledore concluded. A magical construct already designed to confuse and disorient, easily manipulated to serve as a convergence point. They worked together to contain the enlarged tier as best they could, combining Nico's underworld abilities with Percy and Annabeth's Greek protections and the wizard's spells. Though they couldn't close it completely, they managed to stabilize it temporarily. Returning to the castle, they brought Nico up to speed on their investigations and suspicions regarding the fake Moody. The son of Hades listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions about wizarding magic and the tournament structure. I might be able to confirm whether your defense professor is the catalyst, he offered finally. Children of Hades can sense certain things about people, especially those who've tampered with death or crossed magical boundaries. How close would you need to get? Harry asked. Conversation distance. Make it seem casual, nothing suspicious. They arranged a meeting for the following day, integrating Nico into their defense training sessions as a consultant from America, with expertise in particular magical creatures. Dumbledore approved the cover story, announcing Nico's arrival as an extension of their existing exchange program. That night, as they showed Nico to the spare bed added to the 4th-year boys' dormitory, Percy pulled Harry aside. Nico's powerful, but his presence here escalates everything, he warned quietly. Children of Hades tend to attract attention from both sides. You think he'll draw more monsters? Harry asked. And possibly speed up whatever convergence is being planned, Percy confirmed. But we need his knowledge, especially about the underworld aspects of what's happening. Harry nodded thoughtfully. The prophecy mentioned him specifically. Death's own son makes the final divide. He's meant to be here, whatever the risks. The following day brought their planned introduction to Professor Moody. Nico, looking remarkably ordinary in borrowed Hogwarts robes, joined their defense class with a carefully crafted backstory about studying magical creatures of the underworld. Fascinating field, Moody commented, his magical eye fixed unervingly on Nico. Not many wizards brave enough to specialize in death magic. It's a family tradition, Nico replied coolly. We have a certain affinity for it. Throughout the class, Nico maintained a carefully neutral demeanor, though Percy noticed how he occasionally tensed when Moody moved closer. After the session ended, they regrouped in the room of requirement. Well? Annabeth asked immediately. What did you sense? Nico's expression was troubled. He's definitely our catalyst, but it's complicated. There are 2 people there, the imposter and someone else, trapped. The real Moody, Harry concluded. Yes, but it's more than simple imprisonment, Nico explained. The imposter has created a magical link between them, drawing power or knowledge directly from the real Moody while keeping him contained. That would explain how he's maintained such a convincing disguise, Hermione mused. He's not just looking like Moody, he's accessing his memories and mannerisms. There's something else, Nico added reluctantly. The imposter has death magic on him, not Hades' realm, but similar. He's died and returned, or prevented death somehow. Another Horcrux creator? Ron suggested nervously. No, Nico shook his head. Different method, but similar violation of natural law. And he's channeling power from somewhere else, somewhere outside normal reality. That's how he's creating the tiers. This confirmation of their suspicions led to intensified planning. With the 3rd task still weeks away but preparations already underway, they needed to identify the impostor conclusively and determine how to counter his plans without alerting him. Dumbledore, informed of Nico's assessment, proposed a careful approach. We must locate the real Alastor first, ensure his safety, before confronting the impostor. Otherwise, the magical link between them might be used as a weapon. The search for the real Moody became their priority. Using the Marauder's map, they tracked the impostor's movements meticulously, noting that he spent significant time in his office but never appeared to sleep there, instead making regular trips to what appeared on the map as a storage room adjacent to his quarters. That room doesn't exist, Harry noted, having memorized most of Hogwarts' layout through years of exploration. At least, it doesn't have a visible door. Hidden compartment, Nico suggested. Possibly magically expanded. Classic place to keep a prisoner. They needed to investigate without the impostor's knowledge, a challenging proposition given his paranoia and magical eye that could see through most concealment. We need a diversion, Percy decided. Something significant enough to ensure he's fully occupied elsewhere while we search. The opportunity presented itself unexpectedly when Dumbledore announced that all staff would be required to attend a planning session for the third task, including security arrangements that required Mad Eye's expertise in particular. 3 hours, Harry calculated. That's our window. They assembled a small team for the search, Harry with his invisibility cloak, Nico for his ability to sense the real Moody's presence, and Percy for combat backup if needed. The others would maintain watch using the Marauder's map, ready to warn of the impostor's return. The mission began smoothly enough. Harry's invisibility cloak concealed him and Nico, Percy being too tall to fit comfortably, while Percy kept watch in the corridor under the pretense of waiting for a meeting with the professor. Inside Moody's office, Harry and Nico moved carefully among the dark detectors and magical instruments, searching for hidden entrances. There, Nico whispered suddenly, pointing to a seemingly solid wall. I can sense him behind there. Someone alive but, faded. Weak. Harry examined the wall carefully, finding no obvious mechanism. How do we get through? Nico placed his hand against the wall, closing his eyes in concentration. There's a magical lock, tied to specific magical signatures. The imposters and, something else. Something older. They reported this finding to Percy through the enchanted coins Hermione had created for communication. After brief consultation with Annabeth, he suggested, try Revelio spells combined with Nico's underworld magic. Maybe you can temporarily override the lock. For several tense minutes, they attempted various combinations, Harry casting revealing charms while Nico channeled his Hades-given abilities into the barrier. Finally, with a soft click, a seam appeared in the wall, widening into a doorway. Behind it lay a space about the size of a small bedroom, dominated by a large trunk with 7 locks. From within came faint thumping sounds. He's in there, Nico confirmed. The real Moody. Alive but severely weakened. Harry approached the trunk cautiously, examining the locks. Which one opens to where he is? Nico pointed to the 7th lock. That one connects to a magical space. I can sense his life force through it. Using Alohomora on the 7th lock, Harry carefully opened the trunk lid. Inside was not the interior of a trunk but what appeared to be an underground pit. At its bottom lay the real Alastor Moody, thin, missing chunks of his grizzled hair, his wooden leg and magical eye absent. Professor Moody? Harry called softly. We're here to help you. The man looked up weakly, his one natural eye narrowing with suspicion. Potter, he croaked. How do I know it's really you? We know you're being impersonated, Harry explained quickly. Dumbledore sent us to find you. Prove it's Dumbledore, Moody demanded, showing remnants of his famed paranoia even in his weakened state. Tell me something only he would know. Harry hesitated, then remembered something from Dumbledore's pensieve. He testified at your hearing when you were accused of attacking dustbins. Said it was understandable given your history. Moody's face relaxed marginally. Good enough. Now get me out of here before he returns. He comes every hour for. He gestured to tufts of hair missing from his head. Polyjuice ingredients, Harry realized. That's why he drinks from that flask constantly. Using a combination of levitation charms and physical assistance from Percy, summoned once they confirmed the real Moody's presence, they managed to extract the weakened aura from his prison. Nico, meanwhile, examined the magical components of the trunk with growing concern. This isn't just a prison, he noted. It's a power siphon. He's been drawing magical energy from Moody as well as physical components for the disguise. Once freed, Moody confirmed their suspicions between sips of water. Barty Crouch Jr., he revealed hoarsely. Death Eater everyone thought died in Azkaban. Been impersonating me since before term started. Ambushed me in my own home. But Barty Crouch Jr. died in Azkaban, Harry objected. Everyone knows that. Faked his death, Moody explained. Switched with his dying mother using polyjuice, his father helped them. She died in prison wearing his face, he's been living under Imperius at home since. Until he escaped somehow. That explains the death magic Nico sensed, Percy realized. He technically died, as far as official records show. But why impersonate you specifically? Harry asked. Why go to all this trouble? Moody's expression darkened. To get to you, Potter. Everything's been about getting you through the tournament to the final task. The cup in the maze, he's turning it into a portkey. This revelation confirmed their worst fears. The imposter, Crouch Jr., was manipulating the tournament to deliver Harry to Voldemort, likely for the rebirth ritual Rachel had foreseen. And the dimensional tears? Nico pressed. How is he creating those? Don't know all the details, Moody admitted. But he's been communicating with something beyond, using ancient magic, blood rituals. Talks about a grand alliance between his lord and some Titan Master who'll grant immortality and power beyond wizard understanding. The pieces were falling into place. Crouch was the catalyst, using his position at Hogwarts to create the tears while simultaneously ensuring Harry's path through the tournament. The third task would be the culmination of both plans, Harry's delivery to Voldemort coinciding with the final dimensional convergence. We need to get you to Dumbledore, Harry decided. And figure out how to handle Crouch without letting him know we've discovered his plan. Getting the real Moody out of the office proved challenging, he was too weak to walk unassisted, and too distinctive to move through the castle without drawing attention. They eventually managed by using the invisibility cloak to cover him while Percy essentially carried him under the pretense of supporting an injured friend. Dumbledore's reaction to the real Moody's rescue was one of controlled fury, a cold, powerful anger that reminded them all why he was considered the greatest wizard of the age. After ensuring Moody received medical attention from Madame Pomfrey, sworn to secrecy, he convened an emergency meeting with the core group plus Professors McGonagall and Snape. Our priority must be Mr. Potter's safety while simultaneously preventing this dimensional convergence, Dumbledore stated. However, capturing Barty Crouch Jr. immediately would likely accelerate Voldemort's plans rather than hinder them. So we continue to let him think his plan is working, Annabeth concluded. While preparing our countermeasures. Precisely, Miss Chase. We have one significant advantage. We now know the endpoint of both plots. The Triwizard Cup will be a portkey, and the maze itself will serve as the final convergence point. We can prepare for both, Percy suggested. Create our own plan for when Harry reaches the cup, while establishing countermeasures throughout the maze to disrupt the dimensional tiers. Snape, who had been silently observing until now, spoke in his characteristic drawl, "The Dark Lord expects Potter alone. Any deviation will immediately alert him to our knowledge of his plans." "Then I go alone," Harry said firmly. "But prepared. With a way to fight or escape. And we focus on preventing the convergence," Nico added. "If we can stabilize the barriers between worlds during the task, we might sever the connection Kronos is establishing with Voldemort." The planning continued late into the night, developing contingencies for various scenarios. By the time they dispersed, they had established a core strategy. Harry would progress through the maze as expected, equipped with emergency port keys and communication devices, while the others positioned themselves to counter the dimensional convergence at critical points throughout the maze. Remember, Dumbledore cautioned as they prepared to leave, Barty Crouch Jr. must believe his plan remains undiscovered. Any change in your behavior toward Professor Moody could alert him. As they returned to Gryffindor Tower, Harry felt the weight of responsibility settling over him. "I'll be bait," he said quietly to Percy as they walked. "While you all fight to keep the worlds from collapsing together." Percy nodded solemnly. "That's the job sometimes. Being the one the prophecy points to means playing the role you're given, while finding ways to change the ending." "Is that what you do? With your prophecy?" "Every day," Percy confirmed with a wry smile. "The trick is remembering you're not alone, even when you have to walk into danger by yourself." Harry considered this as they reached the portrait hole. "You know, when you first arrived here, I thought you were part of the problem, another complication in an already difficult year. And now? Now I'm thinking that whatever brought you here, whatever is trying to destroy both our worlds, made its first mistake by bringing us together instead of keeping us apart." Percy grinned, the expression lighting up his sea-green eyes with determination. "Prophecies are funny that way. They tend to create exactly the situation needed to challenge them." As they entered the common room, they found Annabeth, Ron, Hermione, and Nico already deep in strategic planning, spreading maps of the maze's planned layout and marking potential weak points for dimensional tiers. "Join us?" Annabeth called, making space at the table. "We're figuring out how to place everyone for maximum effectiveness." Harry took his seat among them, struck by the strangeness and rightness of it all, wizards and demigods united against threats neither could face alone. Whatever awaited in the maze, they would meet it together, even if parts of the journey had to be walked separately. "Let's get to work," he said, pulling the maze schematic closer. "We've got a Titan and a Dark Lord to disappoint." Chapter 3, Pantheons United. Dawn broke over Hogwarts on the day of the third task, painting the castle in gold and shadow. Harry stood at the window of Gryffindor Tower, watching as ministry officials bustled around the Quidditch pitch, now unrecognizable beneath the 20-foot hedges of the maze. In a few hours, he would enter those shadows, knowingly walking into a trap years in the making. "Couldn't sleep either?" Percy asked, appearing beside him. The son of Poseidon looked unusually formal in borrowed Hogwarts robes, though Riptide still bulged in his pocket, ready as always. "Not really," Harry admitted. "Keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. Classic night before quest insomnia." Percy's attempt at a smile didn't reach his eyes. "We've triple-checked everything. Everyone knows their positions. The backup plans have backup plans." Harry nodded, though the knot in his stomach remained. They had spent weeks preparing for this day, training in combined magic, mapping the dimensional weak points throughout the maze, creating emergency protocols. Dumbledore had personally enhanced Harry's wand with subtle protective enchantments, while Annabeth had designed a network of celestial bronze markers to help stabilize the tiers once activated. "And yet, I keep thinking about your oracle's prophecy," Harry said quietly. "Sea and lightning must stand as one against the tide. But we won't be together in there. I'll be heading toward Voldemort while you're fighting to contain the dimensional breach." Percy was silent for a moment, watching a flock of owls circle the Ollery in the distance. "Standing together doesn't always mean standing in the same place," he finally said. "Sometimes it means working different angles of the same fight, trusting each other to handle your part." "Very philosophical," Harry remarked with a hint of a smile. "Don't tell Annabeth. She'll never let me hear the end of it." They shared a brief laugh that eased some of the tension, then headed down to breakfast where the others were waiting. The great hall buzzed with excited chatter about the final task, most students blissfully unaware of the true dangers lurking in the maze. Ron passed Harry a plate of toast. "Eat something. Dad always says never face mortal peril on an empty stomach." "Sound advice," Nico commented dryly. The son of Hades looked even paler than usual in the morning light, shadows under his eyes testifying to his own sleepless night. Hermione, meanwhile, was reviewing a small leather-bound notebook filled with their contingency plans. "I've double-checked the communication system," she reported. "The enchanted coins should work throughout the maze, even near the dimensional distortions. And the anchor points are set," Annabeth added, closing a larger book of architectural diagrams. "Percy, Nico, and I placed them at the key junctions yesterday while the staff was busy with final preparations." Harry forced himself to eat despite his churning stomach. The enormity of what they faced, not just Voldemort's return but a potential collapse of magical boundaries between worlds, felt too vast to comprehend. He found himself focusing instead on immediate concerns, the weight of his wand in his pocket, the emergency port key disguised as a simple bracelet on his wrist, the memory of spells practiced until they became instinct. "Potter." Professor McGonagall's voice cut through his thoughts. She stood behind him, her expression unusually gentle beneath her stern exterior. "The champions' families have been invited to watch the final task. They're waiting for you in the chamber off the hall." Harry blinked in confusion. "My family?" The Dursleys wouldn't, but McGonagall had already moved on to inform Cedric. With a puzzled shrug to the others, Harry made his way to the side chamber, wondering if perhaps some ministry official had been assigned to represent him. When he pushed open the door, his heart leapt. Mrs. Weasley and Bill stood beaming at him, while beside them, looking somewhat out of place but smiling warmly, stood a tall man with sea-green eyes that matched Percy's exactly. "Harry." Mrs. Weasley hurried forward to embrace him. "We thought we'd come and watch you, dear." She pulled back to examine him critically. "You look too thin. Haven't they been feeding you properly?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Weasley," Harry assured her, grinning at Bill, who gave him a wink. His attention, however, kept drifting to the third visitor, unmistakably a god, even in casual clothing. There was something about his presence that reminded Harry of the ocean, vast power contained by choice rather than necessity. "Lord Poseidon," Harry said, inclining his head slightly. The god's eyebrows rose in surprise, then he smiled, the same lopsided grin Percy often wore. "You must be Harry Potter. My son has mentioned you in his prayers." He extended a hand that Harry shook, feeling a curious tingle of power. "Circumstances prevent me from interfering directly, but I wish to observe." "Dad?" Percy's shocked voice came from the doorway. He stood frozen, staring at his father with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" "Officially, I'm touring mortal educational institutions," Poseidon said casually. "Unofficially?" His expression grew serious. "The council is concerned about these dimensional disturbances. Zeus sent me to assess the situation, from a distance, of course." Percy crossed the room to embrace his father briefly, a gesture that seemed to surprise and please Poseidon. "Does this mean the gods are getting involved?" Percy asked hopefully. "Ancient laws still bind us," Poseidon cautioned. "But certain provisions exist for extraordinary circumstances. Particularly those involving threats from outside our normal domains." Mrs. Weasley was staring at Poseidon with evident confusion. "I'm sorry, but who exactly?" "Forgive my manners," Poseidon said smoothly. "I'm Percy's father. I work in oceanic affairs." Bill, whose curse-breaking work had exposed him to many magical cultures, narrowed his eyes with dawning recognition but wisely said nothing. As they toured the grounds together, Percy and Harry showing their families the lake and castle, Poseidon moved beside Harry while the others walked ahead. "My son believes in you," the god said quietly. "That's not something he gives easily." "I believe in him too," Harry replied simply. Poseidon nodded, seemingly satisfied. "The path ahead is darker than either of you realize. When the moment comes, and you'll know it when it does, remember that water and lightning needn't be enemies." Before Harry could ask what he meant, Mrs. Weasley called them to catch up, and the moment passed. But Poseidon's words lingered, adding another piece to the puzzle they were trying to solve. The afternoon brought final preparations. With Professor Moody still maintaining his deception, carefully observed by Dumbledore and the others, they had to conduct their real planning in secret. The Room of Requirement became their command center, where Annabeth outlined the culmination of weeks of strategy. Based on Nico's sensing and our mapping of the weak points, we've identified the pattern, she explained, pointing to a diagram of the maze. The tiers form a pentagram, with the Triwizard Cup at its center. When Harry touches the cup, which has been turned into a portkey by Crouch, Harry interjected. Right. That action will simultaneously trigger the dimensional convergence. Voldemort gets Harry for his resurrection ritual, while Kronos gets a direct gateway between worlds. 2 birds, 1 stone, Percy muttered. Efficient, if diabolical. Our counter-strategy works in phases, Annabeth continued. Nico, Percy, and I will position ourselves at 3 points of the pentagram, ready to activate our stabilizers when the convergence begins. Ron and Hermione will monitor from outside the maze with Fred and George, coordinating our movements through the communication coins. Meanwhile, I go through with Crouch's plan, Harry said grimly. I reach the cup, get transported to Voldemort, and improvise. Not entirely, Hermione objected. You'll have the emergency portkey bracelet, activated by tapping it 3 times and saying, Sanctuary. It'll bring you back to Hogwarts instantly. And this, Percy added, handing Harry a small vial of clear liquid. Seawater from my dad's palace. Breaks any binding spell once. Pour it on whatever's holding you, and it'll dissolve. Harry pocketed both items carefully. And if Voldemort manages to complete his resurrection before I can escape? A heavy silence fell. Finally, Nico spoke. Delay. That's all. Every minute you keep him occupied gives us time to stabilize the tiers and prevent Kronos from crossing over completely. If both lords unite their powers. He didn't need to finish. They all understood the stakes. One last thing, Annabeth said, pulling out a small bronze disc similar to the one they'd used for the Iris message. Emergency beacon. If things go critically wrong, crush it. We'll know immediately that the plan has failed and move to contingencies. As the meeting concluded, Percy pulled Harry aside while the others gathered their equipment. When you're out there, he said quietly, facing Voldemort. Remember what you're fighting for. Not just survival, but everyone waiting for you to return. Harry nodded, throat tight with emotion. Same goes for you. Don't do anything stupidly heroic. Me? Percy grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes. Never. The lie hung between them, comfortable and understood. They were both stupidly heroic by nature, it was part of what had forged their unlikely friendship across worlds. Evening fell, and with it came the final task. The Quidditch pitch had transformed completely, towering hedges forming an impenetrable labyrinth beneath a sky turning slowly purple with sunset. Stands surrounded the maze, filled with excited spectators including several ministry officials, the Weasleys, and Poseidon, who sat near Dumbledore with an expression of casual interest that didn't quite mask his vigilance. Harry stood with the other champions at the entrance, listening to Bagman's final instructions with half an ear. His focus was on the maze itself, where he knew Percy, Annabeth, and Nico were already in position, having slipped inside during the confusion of preparations. Somewhere, Crouch Jr., still disguised as Moody, was making his final adjustments to the cup, unaware that his deception had been discovered. On my whistle, Harry and Cedric. Bagman announced cheerfully, oblivious to the true danger lurking in the maze. The whistle blew, and Harry stepped into the maze alongside Cedric, immediately engulfed by the hedge's shadow. They exchanged brief nods before taking different paths at the first fork. Alone now, Harry moved purposefully through the maze, wand illuminated. Unlike the other champions, he wasn't searching randomly, they had memorized the maze's layout during their planning, giving him a direct route to the center. The real challenges would be the obstacles Crouch had arranged along the way and, more worryingly, the dimensional disturbances that might manifest as the task progressed. The first sign of trouble came about 10 minutes in. The air around Harry shimmered strangely, like heat waves rising from pavement, and the hedge walls seemed to flicker between their normal appearance and something darker, thornier. Visual distortion at checkpoint 3, Harry murmured into his communication coin. The boundaries already thinning. Confirmed, came Annabeth's voice, slightly distorted. Similar effects near the north quadrant. Maintain course but proceed with caution. Harry continued forward, dispatching a boggart and navigating around a patch of golden mist that reversed gravity. These were standard wizard challenges, concerning but familiar. What worried him more were the shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources, and the occasional whispers in languages he didn't recognize. Deeper in the maze, he encountered his first truly abnormal obstacle. What appeared initially to be a sphinx transformed as he approached, its lion body elongating into something more serpentine, its woman's face taking on a cruel, inhuman cast. Lamia, Harry identified, remembering Percy's monster briefings. A creature from Greek mythology that preyed on children, not something that should exist in the wizarding world. The Lamia smiled, revealing needle-like teeth. "Little wizard," she hissed. "So far from your protectors." Harry raised his wand, recalling the combined magic techniques they'd practiced. "Incendio Sanctus," he shouted, focusing his intent on purification rather than mere destruction. Blue-white flames erupted from his wand, not the normal reddish fire of a standard incendio spell but something closer to Greek fire. The Lamia shrieked and retreated, her form wavering as if struggling to maintain solid existence in this world. Taking advantage of her distraction, Harry darted past, heart pounding. The presence of Greek monsters confirmed their worst fears. The boundaries were already breaking down, allowing creatures from Percy's world to manifest within the maze. "Encountered a Lamia," he reported through the coin. "The convergence is accelerating." "We're feeling it too," Percy's voice replied, tension evident. "Some of the stabilizers are already activating automatically. Whatever's happening is building faster than we anticipated." Harry quickened his pace, navigating the increasingly unstable maze. The hedges themselves were changing, patches of normal plants interspersed with sections that resembled the dark, twisted vegetation of the underworld as Nico had described it. The sky above, visible in brief glimpses, had taken on an unnatural purple-black hue streaked with gold. Near the center of the maze, Harry heard a shout of alarm. Following the sound, he found Cedric battling what appeared to be an acromantula but behaved more like an impausa, its movements uncannily fast and purposeful. "Stupefy!" Harry called, sending a stunning spell at the creature. It faltered momentarily, allowing Cedric to break free from its grasp. "Potter!" Cedric gasped, his robes torn and bloody. "What's happening?" "These creatures, they're not normal magical beasts. The maze is destabilizing," Harry explained quickly. "Listen, Cedric, you need to send up red sparks and get out of here. It's not safe." Cedric's eyes narrowed with determination. "I'm not abandoning the task. The cup must be close, we could reach it together." Harry hesitated. Bringing Cedric to the cup would endanger him needlessly, exposing him to Voldemort's return. But before he could argue further, a cold wind swept through the maze, carrying whispers that seemed to freeze the air itself. "He comes," the whispers hissed. "The Lord of Time approaches the threshold." The ground beneath them trembled, and in the distance, a golden light pulsed from the direction of the maze's center. "That's the cup," Harry realized. "It's activating early. Something's wrong." His communication coin heated suddenly against his chest. "Harry!" Annabeth's voice came through, urgent and fragmented. "The convergence, happening now, cup is, hurry." The connection cut off abruptly, replaced by static. "Cedric, send up sparks now," Harry urged, already turning toward the center. This isn't about the tournament anymore. Perhaps something in Harry's tone convinced him, for Cedric nodded grimly and shot red sparks into the air. "Be careful, Potter," he called as Harry sprinted away. The final approach to the cup was chaos. The hedge walls rippled like liquid, occasionally revealing glimpses of other places, the sulphurous fields of Tartarus, shadowy corridors of what might have been the Department of Mysteries, a golden ship sailing across a black sea. Reality itself seemed to be fracturing around the Triwizard Cup, which glowed with an unnatural light at the center of the clearing. Percy and Nico were already there, standing at opposite points of a triangle formation around the cup. Bronze markers pulsed at their feet, creating a containment field that wavered under the strain of the dimensional pressure. "Where's Annabeth?" Harry called, moving to complete their formation. Intercepted by Crouch, Percy replied grimly, sweat beading on his forehead as he channeled power into the stabilization field. "She's handling it. We need to contain this now." Harry took his position, feeling the magical current immediately, raw power flowing between the markers, fighting against the convergence centered on the cup. The air above the trophy shimmered and tore, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness shot through with gold. "It's too strong," Nico shouted over the rising magical wind. "Something's forcing it open from both sides." "Kronos and Voldemort," Harry confirmed, raising his wand to add his own power to the containment field. "They're working together." Within the vortex, Harry caught glimpses of a graveyard, the one from his dreams, and beyond it, a massive golden sarcophagus inscribed with scenes of destruction. Two rituals occurring simultaneously, connected through the torn fabric of reality. "We need more power," Percy called, his face strained with effort. "The stabilizers can't hold it." A sudden calm voice cut through the chaos. "Perhaps I might assist." Poseidon stood at the maze entrance, no longer maintaining his casual demeanor. Power radiated from him in waves, his eyes glowing with the same sea-green intensity as Percy's when he used his abilities. "Dad," Percy gasped. "The ancient laws, applied differently at convergence points," Poseidon finished, stepping forward. "When realms meet, certain flexibility is permitted." The god raised his trident, which had appeared in his hand without warning, and drove it into the ground at the edge of their formation. The earth trembled, and a surge of pure power flowed into their containment field, temporarily strengthening it. "That will hold momentarily," Poseidon said grimly. "But the convergence cannot be prevented now, only guided. The cup must be claimed to complete the circuit." "If I touch it, I'll be sent to Voldemort," Harry protested. "Yes," the god agreed. "That part of the plan must proceed. But the connection works both ways, Harry Potter. What passes through in one direction can return by another." Understanding dawned on Percy's face. "You're saying we can use the portkey connection as a channel. Control the convergence rather than trying to stop it." "Precisely." Poseidon's expression was grave. "Direct it, contain it, and then sever it, but only after both sides have exposed themselves." Harry looked from Percy to Nico, then to the swirling vortex above the cup. "I have to go," he realized. "Face Voldemort, while you channel the convergence through me." "It's dangerous," Nico warned. "You'll be at the center of power from two worlds. If your body can't handle it, I've survived killing curses and basilisk venom," Harry said with grim determination. "Let's find out what else I can survive." Percy looked like he wanted to object, but instead clasped Harry's shoulder firmly. "Remember everything we taught you. Greek monsters, wizard dark lords, the principles are the same. Find the weakness, exploit it, and never stop moving. And take this," Nico added, pressing something into Harry's hand, a small black stone that felt unnaturally cold. "Shadow Stone. Squeeze it if things get dire. It'll create a momentary darkness, might give you the seconds you need to escape." Harry nodded gratefully, pocketing the stone alongside his other emergency items. "Keep the connection stable as long as you can. I'll try to disrupt Voldemort's ritual before he completes it." "Harry," Percy called as he approached the cup. "Sea and lightning, standing as one." Harry smiled grimly. Against the tide. With a deep breath, he grasped the Triwizard Cup, and the world dissolved into a swirl of color and sound as the portkey activated, pulling him through the very convergence they had been fighting to contain. Harry landed hard on damp ground, the cup flying from his grasp. Disoriented, he scrambled to his feet, immediately recognizing his surroundings from his dreams, a graveyard, dark and overgrown, with a small church visible in the distance and a hill rising to his right, topped by a fine old house. But something was wrong. The graveyard seemed unstable, portions of it flickering and overlapping with somewhere else, a vast, dark chamber dominated by a golden sarcophagus. The convergence was affecting both locations, creating a half-merged reality where neither world was fully solid. A figure emerged from the shadows, short and hooded, carrying what looked like a bundle of robes. Harry recognized Wormtail instantly, and the high, cold voice that emanated from the bundle confirmed his worst fears. "Bind him," Voldemort commanded. Wormtail raised his wand, but Harry was faster. Months of training with Percy had honed his reflexes to demigod standards. He dove behind a headstone as Wormtail's spell shattered the ground where he had stood. Expelliarmus. Harry countered, the spell catching Wormtail by surprise and sending his wand flying. Without his wand, the rat-like man seemed momentarily confused, giving Harry precious seconds to assess the situation. A massive cauldron stood nearby, already bubbling with some potion. Beside it lay a fresh grave, Tom Riddle Sr., Harry realized, remembering the plan Wormtail and Voldemort had discussed in his dreams. Bone of the father, flesh of the servant, blood of the enemy, the components for Voldemort's rebirth. But intertwined with this familiar scene were elements that shouldn't exist in the wizarding world, golden light pulsing through cracks in reality, whispers in ancient Greek, and shadows that moved with conscious purpose. "Get him!" Voldemort screeched, his inhuman voice filled with rage. Wormtail scurried after his wand, but froze suddenly, his body going rigid as shadows wrapped around his legs. Behind him, a tall figure shimmered into existence, not fully corporeal, but unmistakable with his golden eyes and cruel smile. "So this is your chosen vessel, Riddle." The newcomer's voice resonated with ancient power, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "A broken wizard and his rat servant? I expected more from our alliance." The bundle in Wormtail's arms writhed angrily. "Kronos. You were to remain in your realm until the convergence was complete." "Plans change," the Titan Lord said dismissively. "The demigods are containing the convergence, channeling it through your little trophy. We must accelerate our union." Harry used their conversation to edge toward a large stone angel, providing better cover while keeping both threats in view. His mind raced, processing the implications. If Kronos and Voldemort were arguing, their alliance might not be as stable as they'd feared. "The ritual must be completed first," Voldemort insisted. "I need my body before we can proceed with the power transfer." Kronos made a dismissive gesture, and the cauldron's contents began bubbling more violently. "Then let us not waste time. Servant. Continue the ritual." Released from the shadow binding, Wormtail scrambled to obey, retrieving his wand and approaching the grave of Tom Riddle Sr. As he began the ritual, extracting bone from the grave, Harry considered his options. The emergency portkey bracelet would allow escape, but using it now would abandon their plan to disrupt the convergence. The vial of seawater might free him if captured, but offered no offensive capabilities. The shadow stone from Nico remained an unknown quantity, a momentary advantage at best. Harry's hand brushed his communication coin, and he realized it was warm again, active. Pressing it discreetly, he whispered, "I'm in the graveyard. Voldemort and Kronos are here, arguing. Ritual beginning." Percy's voice came through faintly, distorted by the dimensional interference. "We're stabilizing the connection. Can you disrupt the ritual without being captured?" "Working on it," Harry muttered, watching as Wormtail continued the macabre ceremony, now severing his own hand with a cry of pain that echoed across the graveyard. "Blood of the enemy, forcibly taken," Wormtail gasped, turning toward Harry with a silver dagger. This was the moment to act. Harry aimed his wand at the cauldron itself. Reducto, he shouted, channeling all his power into the blasting curse. The spell struck true, but instead of shattering the cauldron, it created a strange reaction. The potion within froze momentarily, then began swirling in reverse, as if time itself was being manipulated around it. Foolish boy, Kronos laughed. Did you think conventional magic would work against the Lord of Time? The Titan's form solidified slightly, drawing substance from the converging realities. With a gesture, he froze Harry in place, not through a spell, but by slowing time around his body to a near standstill. Trapped in a temporal bubble, Harry could only watch as Wormtail approached with the dagger. He felt the blade pierce his arm, felt blood drawn forcibly for the ritual, unable to resist or even cry out as time moved differently for his body. "It is ready, Master," Wormtail whimpered, adding Harry's blood to the cauldron. The potion turned blindingly white, and Wormtail lifted the bundled form of Voldemort, dropping it into the cauldron with a splash. For one wild moment, Harry hoped it might drown, but then the cauldron melted away, revealing a tall, skeletally thin man rising from the steaming liquid. Lord Voldemort had returned. As the Dark Lord examined his new body with evident pleasure, Kronos released his temporal hold on Harry, who collapsed to his knees, gasping as normal time resumed for him. "Now," Kronos said, his form growing more substantial by the moment, "we complete our bargain, Riddle. The power I promised you in exchange for my passage into your world." Voldemort turned his crimson eyes toward the Titan Lord, his lipless mouth curving into what might have been a smile. "Indeed. Though I wonder, why would a being of your power share anything with me?" "Because I cannot fully manifest in this realm without assistance," Kronos admitted. "The ancient barriers prevent it. I need a willing anchor, a physical presence to channel my essence." "And in return?" Voldemort pressed, accepting the robes Wormtail offered with a distracted gesture. "Power beyond your comprehension. Mastery over time itself. True immortality, not the fragmented existence your crude Horcruxes provide." Harry felt his coin heat against his chest again. Connection stabilized, Percy's voice came through, clearer now. "We're channeling the convergence through you, Harry. Can you feel it?" And suddenly, Harry could. A strange energy coursed through him, neither painful nor pleasant, but intense, as if he were becoming a conduit for something vast. The dimensional tear they'd seen in the maze now centered on him, invisible but present, connecting him to Percy and the others at Hogwarts. Voldemort and Kronos were too engrossed in their negotiation to notice the change, giving Harry precious moments to gather his strength. He realized that the convergence power flowing through him had neutralized Kronos's time manipulation. The Titan could no longer freeze him in place. "We begin the merger now," Kronos declared, extending a hand toward Voldemort. "Your body will host us both until the convergence is complete. Then we shall reshape both worlds as we see fit." Voldemort hesitated only briefly before clasping the offered hand. Immediately, golden light flowed between them, Kronos's essence beginning to pour into Voldemort's newly formed body. Harry knew he had to act now. Rising to his feet, he pulled out the vial of seawater from Percy's father. Rather than using it on bindings as intended, he uncorked it and flung the contents directly at the merging figures. "For Poseidon," he shouted, remembering the god's words about water and lightning. The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. Where the divine seawater touched the merging forms, their connection sizzled and broke apart, Kronos' essence recoiling as if burned while Voldemort screamed in genuine pain. "What is this?" the Dark Lord shrieked, his skin smoking where the water had touched him. Harry didn't waste the advantage. Raising his wand, he channeled the convergence energy flowing through him into his next spell, Expecto Patronum. What emerged from his wand wasn't the usual silver stag, but something more substantial, a Patronus infused with power from both worlds, glowing with blue-white light tinged with sea green. The stag charged directly at Kronos, its antlers lowered aggressively. When it made contact, the effect was catastrophic for the Titan Lord. His semi-corporeal form shattered into fragments of golden light, his scream of rage echoing across dimensions. Potter! Voldemort recovered quickly, fury contorting his snake-like features. He raised his wand, but before he could cast, a wave of darkness swept across the graveyard, Nico's shadow stone, crushed in Harry's free hand, creating momentary night. In that instant of darkness, Harry activated his emergency port key, tapping the bracelet 3 times. Sanctuary, he gasped. The last thing he saw before the port key swept him away was Voldemort's face contorted with rage, and behind him, the scattered essence of Kronos beginning to reform, reaching out with tendrils of golden light toward the Dark Lord once more. Harry materialized in the center of the maze, exactly where he had departed. But the scene had transformed dramatically. The containment field had expanded into a full dome of swirling energy, bronze, silver, and blue-green power flowing in complex patterns. Percy, Nico, and Poseidon maintained their positions at 3 points of the formation, now joined by Annabeth and Dumbledore, who had apparently arrived during Harry's absence. "Harry!" Percy called, his face lighting with relief. "Did you?" "Disrupted their merger," Harry confirmed, staggering slightly as the convergence energy continued to flow through him. "Used your dad's water. But they'll try again," Kronos was already reforming. "Then we proceed to Phase 2, Dumbledore said calmly, though his eyes blazed with intense focus as he channeled power into the containment field. "Severing the connection permanently." "How?" Harry asked, moving to complete their formation as directed by Annabeth's urgent gestures. "By turning their own plan against them," Poseidon explained, his divine aura pulsing with each word. "They created this convergence to unite their powers. We will use it to banish both simultaneously." The god raised his trident, and the convergence energy flowing through Harry shifted, becoming more directed, purposeful. "The connection runs both ways," Poseidon continued. "Just as Kronos reached into this world, we can push back into his. But we need an anchor on each side, someone connected to both realms." Understanding dawned on Harry. "Me and Percy." "Precisely," Dumbledore confirmed. "You, touched by Voldemort's power since infancy, and Perseus, son of a god. Together, you form a perfect channel between worlds." Percy moved to stand directly across from Harry, the Triwizard Cup between them on its pedestal. "Like we practiced," he said with a grim smile, extending his hands. Harry clasped them firmly, completing the circuit. Immediately, power surged between them, raw energy that made Harry's scar burn and Percy's sea-green eyes glow with internal light. "Now," Annabeth called, activating additional bronze markers around their feet, "we reverse the flow." The convergence energy that had been flowing into their world through Harry now began to push outward, directed back through the dimensional tear. Harry gasped as he felt the connection to Voldemort flare painfully through his scar, the Dark Lord suddenly aware of what they were attempting. In the graveyard, Voldemort screamed as the power intended to help him merge with Kronos instead began tearing them apart, forcing the Titan Lord's essence back toward his own realm while simultaneously weakening the Dark Lord's new form. "He's fighting it." Harry gritted out, his scar bleeding freely now as Voldemort raged against the reversed convergence. "So is Kronos," Percy confirmed, his body trembling with the effort of channeling such power. "I can feel him trying to hold on, to complete the merger." "We need more power," Nico said urgently. "Something to push them past the tipping point." Poseidon's expression turned grim. "There is one option. But it requires a sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Harry asked, though he already suspected the answer. "The cup," Dumbledore said quietly. "The object that bridges the worlds. It must be destroyed at precisely the right moment, when the convergence reaches its peak." "But that's ancient magic," Annabeth protested. The kind that leaves a mark," Dumbledore finished. "Yes, Miss Chase. Whoever destroys the cup will bear the consequences of severing such a powerful magical connection." A tense silence fell, broken only by the swirling energy around them and distant shouts from outside the maze as spectators and staff tried to understand what was happening. "I'll do it," Harry and Percy said simultaneously. They looked at each other, and Harry saw in Percy's eyes the same determination he felt himself, the willingness to sacrifice for something greater. Together then, Harry decided. We started this together, we'll finish it the same way. Percy nodded, his grip tightening on Harry's hands. On 3. 1. 2. Harry continued, focusing all his will on the cup between them. 3, they shouted together. As the convergence reached its crescendo, Harry and Percy simultaneously released each other's hands and drove their weapons into the Triwizard Cup, Harry's wand and Percy's sword riptide piercing the magical trophy from opposite sides. The effect was cataclysmic. The cup shattered with a sound like worlds colliding, releasing a shockwave of pure magical energy that knocked everyone off their feet. The containment field imploded, drawing the fragmented convergence energy back into itself before expelling it outward in a controlled explosion that rippled across dimensions. In the graveyard, Voldemort howled as Kronos' essence was violently ripped away from him, drawn back to its own realm by the collapsing convergence. The partially merged power he had absorbed tore free as well, leaving him weakened but alive, his rage building as he realized the magnitude of Potter's interference. At Hogwarts, the maze shimmered and stabilized, the unnatural darkness receding as the dimensional tiers sealed themselves one by one. The swirling vortex above where the cup had stood condensed into a single point of light before winking out of existence. Harry and Percy lay unconscious at the center of the formation, a strange marking burned into their right hands where they had last touched, a symbol combining a lightning bolt and a trident, permanently etched into their skin by the magical backlash. It is done, Poseidon said quietly, kneeling beside his son. The worlds are separate once more. Dumbledore moved to Harry's side, checking his pulse with evident relief. And the connection between Voldemort and Kronos? Severed, for now, the god confirmed. Though both survive, neither achieved their goal of merging powers. They are diminished, forced back to their separate realms to recover. Annabeth and Nico were already administering nectar to Percy, while Dumbledore conjured a stretcher for Harry. Around them, the maze hedges began to lower as the tournament officials finally managed to override the enchantments, revealing the strange scene to the bewildered spectators. What will we tell them? Annabeth asked, gesturing toward the crowd. Dumbledore's eyes regained some of their familiar twinkle. The truth, Miss Chase. Or at least, a version of it. A brave stand against dark forces attempting to use the tournament for their own purposes. Heroes from different traditions uniting against a common threat. And the fact that one of those heroes is the son of a god? Nico asked dryly. The wizarding world has its own legends, Dumbledore replied. Perhaps it's time they remembered that some legends walk among us still. As meta-wizards rushed forward to tend to the injured, Poseidon placed a hand on his son's forehead. He will recover, the god said with certainty. Both of them will. They carry a piece of this convergence now, a connection that transcends the separation of our worlds. Is that a good thing? Annabeth asked carefully. Poseidon considered for a moment, watching as Harry and Percy were lifted onto stretchers, the identical markings on their hands glowing faintly in the evening light. That, he said finally, will depend entirely on them. Harry woke in the hospital wing 3 days later, greeted by the familiar sight of white curtains and the smell of healing potions. His right hand throbbed dully, the new marking still sensitive to touch. Welcome back, Mr. Potter, Madame Pomfrey said briskly, appearing at his bedside with a steaming goblet. Drink this. All of it. Harry complied, grimacing at the bitter taste. Percy, he asked as soon as he could speak. Recovering well, she assured him, nodding toward a bed across the wing where Percy sat propped up against pillows, talking quietly with Annabeth. Though he refuses standard potions in favor of that nectar substance. Most irregular, but effective nonetheless. As if sensing Harry's gaze, Percy looked up and grinned, raising his marked hand in greeting. Harry returned the gesture, feeling a curious warmth flow through the symbol as he did so. The doors to the hospital wing burst open, admitting Ron, Hermione, and a surprisingly large entourage including Dumbledore, McGonagall, the Weasleys, Nico, and even Snape lurking at the back with his customary scowl. Harry. Hermione rushed forward, stopping just short of hugging him when Madame Pomfrey made a warning noise. "We've been so worried. How do you feel?" "Like I've been run over by the Hogwarts Express," Harry admitted, smiling despite his discomfort. "But alive." "More than can be said for Barty Crouch Jr., Ron said grimly. "They found him dead in Moody's office after everything went down. Looks like he got caught in some backlash from the Convergence collapse." Harry digested this news with mixed feelings. The man had orchestrated Voldemort's return and endangered countless lives, but death seemed a harsh punishment. "And Voldemort?" he asked quietly, looking to Dumbledore. The headmaster stepped forward, his expression grave. "Alive, but significantly weakened by the failed merger attempt. According to our sources, he has retreated to recover his strength, a process that may take considerable time, given the magical damage he sustained." "We've bought time, then," Harry concluded. "Not victory, but time. Often that is the most valuable prize in any conflict," Dumbledore agreed. "Particularly when it allows for preparation and alliance building." The conversation turned to the aftermath of the Convergence crisis. The Ministry had initially attempted to deny Voldemort's return, but the combined testimony of Harry, Percy, and Dumbledore, backed by physical evidence from the graveyard recovered by Order members, had forced Fudge to acknowledge at least the possibility of dark forces at work. "He's established a committee to investigate extraplanar magical threats," Mr. Weasley explained with a hint of exasperation. "Bureaucracy's favorite response to the unprecedented. And our world?" Percy called from his bed, where he'd been listening to the conversation. Nico answered, moving to stand between the two beds. "The tears have healed completely. Camp is secure again, though we've had some unexpected developments." "Meaning?" Percy prompted. "Rachel issued a new prophecy," Nico said. "Specifically about the aftermath of the Convergence. Something about bonds forged in dimensional fire and pathways opened that gods cannot close." "The marking," Annabeth explained, gesturing to Percy and Harry's hands. "It's not just a scar. It's a connection, a permanent link between our worlds, embodied in both of you." Harry examined the symbol on his hand with new interest. "So even though we severed the Convergence, you and Percy remain connected," Dumbledore confirmed. "A smaller, more stable bridge between realms. One that cannot be exploited as the tears were, but allows for communication, shall we say. We can call each other for help," Percy translated, his eyes lighting with understanding. "If either world faces a threat like this again." "Indeed," Dumbledore smiled. "Though perhaps we might allow some recovery time before testing that particular feature." The visit continued with updates on the other champions, all recovered from their maze ordeals, the official tournament resolution. Harry and Percy jointly awarded the victory, though Percy had declined the prize money, and plans for enhanced cooperation between magical communities worldwide in response to the Convergence threat. Eventually, Madame Pomfrey shooed everyone out except Dumbledore, who lingered to speak privately with Harry and Percy. "I must address your immediate future," the headmaster said, conjuring comfortable chairs beside both beds. "Mr. Jackson, your father indicated before departing that your return to Camp Half-Blood should be possible within the week, once you've sufficiently recovered." Percy nodded, though Harry noticed a flicker of something like regret cross his face. "I should get back. They'll need help preparing defenses in case Kronos tries again." "And he will," Dumbledore said soberly. "Just as Voldemort will not abandon his ambitions. Both have been delayed, not defeated. But next time, we'll be ready for them," Harry said with quiet determination. "Both worlds will be." "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed. "Which brings me to a proposal. While the large-scale convergence has been prevented, your unique connection represents an opportunity for continued exchange between our magical traditions." "What kind of exchange?" Percy asked. "I was thinking perhaps an ambassadorial arrangement. Periodic visits between Hogwarts and Camp Half-Blood, educational exchanges, sharing of defensive techniques, cooperative research. Harry and Percy exchanged surprised glances. You think Chiron would agree to that? Percy asked skeptically. He already has, in principle. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. We had a most enlightening conversation via iris message while you were recovering. The possibilities unfolded in Harry's mind, wizards learning demigod combat techniques, demigods exploring the applications of wand magic, both groups better prepared for whatever threats might emerge from either world. I'm in, Harry said immediately. Though I suppose I'll need to learn to use a sword properly. Percy grinned. And I should probably figure out how to cast a spell without flooding the room. Excellent, Dumbledore rose from his chair. I'll leave you both to rest. We can discuss details once you've recovered fully. After the headmaster departed, a comfortable silence fell between Harry and Percy, both contemplating the strange journey that had brought them together and the bond that would apparently keep them connected. So, Percy said finally, when you visit Camp Half-Blood, fair warning, the lava wall is no joke. Harry laughed. And when you come back to Hogwarts, watch out for the moving staircases. And Peeves. And Mrs. Norris. And, I get it, Percy interrupted, grinning. Magical death trap disguised as a school. Sounds like home already. They fell silent again, but it was a companionable quiet, the kind that exists between friends who have faced death together and emerged changed but stronger. Percy, Harry said after a while, his voice serious. Thank you. For everything. Percy looked over, his sea-green eyes understanding the depth behind those simple words. That's what friends do, right? Show up unexpectedly from another dimension and help fight evil lords. Right, Harry agreed with a smile. Just an average year at Hogwarts. The end of term arrived with unusual solemnity. The Great Hall was decorated not with house colors but with simple black and silver hangings, commemorating both the victory over the convergence threat and the losses sustained in the process. Cedric Diggory, though he had survived the maze, had been seriously injured protecting younger students when a dimensional tear had temporarily opened near the Hufflepuff dormitories during the crisis. Dumbledore rose to address the assembled students, including the Beauxbatons and Durmstrang delegations who had delayed their departure to attend the closing feast. Another year gone, the headmaster began, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed hall. And what a year it has been. We have witnessed events unprecedented in magical history, the meeting of traditions long separated, the cooperation of powers thought incompatible, and the courage of students from all houses and schools in the face of extraordinary danger. His gaze swept across the tables, lingering briefly on Harry at Gryffindor and Percy seated beside him as an honorary member. Some of you may have heard rumors about what occurred during the final task of the Triwizard Tournament. Let me be clear, Lord Voldemort attempted to return to power, assisted by forces from beyond our normal magical understanding. That this attempt was thwarted is due entirely to the bravery and quick thinking of those who recognized the threat and acted decisively against it. Murmurs spread through the hall at the direct mention of Voldemort's name, but Dumbledore continued undeterred. In light of these events, I must ask all of you to consider carefully what lies ahead. We stand at a crossroads in magical history. The boundaries between different magical traditions have been both challenged and reinforced. We have seen the dangers of isolation and the strength found in unity. He gestured toward Percy and the small group of demigods who had joined him during the crisis. Our guests from America represent a magical tradition older than Hogwarts itself, one with its own strengths, its own challenges, and its own valuable perspectives. That they came to our aid in our hour of need speaks to the potential of cooperation between all magical peoples. Percy shifted uncomfortably under the collective gaze of the hall but maintained a dignified expression that would have made Annabeth proud. As you depart for your summer holidays, I ask you to remember this: magic, in all its forms, is neither inherently light nor dark. It is our choices, our intentions, and our willingness to stand together against those who would use power for domination that define us as a community. Dumbledore raised his goblet. To unity in diversity. To courage in the face of darkness. And to friendships that transcend the boundaries of worlds. The hall rose as one, echoing the toast. As Harry raised his goblet, he felt the mark on his hand warm slightly, a reminder of the connection that would continue long after they parted. The Hogwarts Express journey back to London had a bittersweet quality for Harry. Percy and the other demigods would be traveling directly back to America via a specially arranged portkey, meaning their goodbyes would come at Hogsmeade Station rather than King's Cross. As they unloaded their trunks from the carriages, Percy pulled Harry aside, away from the bustling crowd of students. "So," he said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "I guess this is it. For now, anyway." Harry nodded, feeling strangely reluctant to say goodbye to someone who'd become such an important friend in a relatively short time. "For now," he agreed. "Until the next crisis, at least." Percy smiled. "Let's hope that's not too soon. I'd like a chance to deal with my own prophecy before taking on any more world-ending threats." "Fair enough." Harry extended his hand, the one bearing their shared mark. "Good luck with that, by the way. The whole, save or destroy the world, thing." Percy clasped Harry's hand firmly, their marks aligning perfectly. A subtle current of energy passed between them, not painful, but a reminder of the power they had channeled together. "Same to you with your Dark Lord problem," Percy replied. "Though something tells me we'll be comparing notes before either of us is done." They held the handshake a moment longer than necessary, both aware that they were saying goodbye not just to each other but to an extraordinary chapter in their lives, a time when Greek gods and wizarding magic had collided and cooperated against impossible odds. "Percy!" Annabeth called from where the other demigods were gathering around a simple bronze disc, their portkey home. "It's time." With a final nod to Harry, Percy jogged over to join his friends. As they positioned themselves around the portkey, he turned back once more, raising his marked hand in farewell. Harry returned the gesture, feeling a curious certainty that this wasn't truly an ending but a pause, a temporary separation between allies whose paths were destined to cross again. As the demigods vanished in a swirl of magic, Harry boarded the Hogwarts Express with Ron and Hermione, his mind already turning to the challenges ahead. Voldemort was weakened but not defeated. The wizarding world remained skeptical and divided. And somewhere in another reality, Percy faced his own destiny with equal courage and uncertainty. But for the first time, neither of them faced their prophecies alone. Between their worlds now existed a bridge, a connection forged in the crucible of convergence, a reminder that even the most insurmountable obstacles could be faced with the right allies at your side. Harry looked down at the mark on his hand, tracing the combined lightning bolt and trident with his finger. Whatever came next, they would face it as they had faced the convergence, together, across worlds, united against the tide. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.